Okay, good afternoon, everybody. As I said earlier on, thank you. You are all welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us. And welcome to Own Your Health 2021. This is the first one for the year. So, you're welcome. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Flora Coker, and I'm the founder. Just give me 1 second. I'm getting feedback. Just give me a second. I was getting feedback from the YouTube. So, my name is Flora Coker, and I'm the founder of Encapsulate Healthcare Solutions. My passion, as some of you know, and some of you that may not know, is imparting knowledge, helping other people to do better and choose better and make better choices. So, this organization, founded by divine purpose, to bring solutions to different health situations in, well, first of all, it was Nigeria, because they say charity brings us home. But now, of course, we've expanded to the whole of Africa. Yes, we're all brothers and sisters, so we're extending the love. After feedback from the first one, people were asking me why only Nigeria. So here we have extended it to the whole of Africa. We have someone already joined us from Swaziland, and we have some people who have registered from South Africa and Zambia, and we're expecting them to join very soon. So what's the aim of this webinar? What's the aim of today? The aim of today is to help you to make better choices about your health by giving you information, the correct information, because these days there's a lot of misinformation out there. And what we want to do is give you accurate and correct information so that you can make better choices about health. So when you see something that may be misinformation or something, you can tell and say, no, this is not correct. So that's what we're here to do today, so that we can become responsible users. The topic today is about medicines. We want everyone to be responsible users of medicines. So perhaps by you knowing how a medicine is made and the future topics we're going to cover and how the medicine interacts with your body, then you can be a responsible user of medication. So I don't want to waste any more time. It's already 3:10. We're going to get into it, and I'm just going to introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker today is Dr. Orode Adijurengo. She is the founder of Me, You, and Superbugs, the public engagement project on antibiotic resistance in Nigeria. She also tutors in the infection prevention and public health courses at the University of Essex online in the UK. And she's also a senior scientist at a drug discovery biotech here in the UK. Her research interests include infection prevention, public health, and drug discovery. So she's going to be doing the drug discovery element first. She leads and participates in diverse science communication projects to engage the public with science in easy to understand ways, which is what we're going to do today. Explain to you some of the science behind how medicines are made and make it easy for you to understand. So I am going to hand over to you, Dr. Orode. I believe I have made you a co-host, so you should be able to share. Over to you.
Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Awesome. And you can hear me? Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, so today I am just going to give you a brief summary of a bit of the early stage drug discovery process. So before I start, thank you to the Encapsulate team for having me on here. So I hope you enjoy the talk as much as I've enjoyed preparing it, and you learn a thing or two. And then towards the end, what I'm going to do is try and give you an insight into what I do as part of in the lab, the early basic research, the early parts of drug discovery. All right. Okay. So usually how we start off, there's a problem. So there's no drug for a particular disease or infection, things like that. So there's what we generally refer to as an unmet clinical need. So maybe the drug is no longer effective or there's resistance to it. and we need to find new ones. So new molecules, new compounds that would be able to achieve a desired effect in the human host. Okay, so the research usually starts commonly in academic research institutions, universities, biotechnology labs, maybe the big pharma companies like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, all of those. And one of the things we do is to try and they would do anyway, and we do. You try and identify pathways in the body. So when you think about your lectures, I know there's some students here. So your lectures in biochemistry, when you're looking at structures of different proteins, we even have specialties, things we do in microbiology and bioinformatics. I'll talk a bit more about that. So I thought I'd put those kind of things in so you can see the relevance of some of the subjects that you're currently studying if you're students here, or maybe you didn't even know about the specialties, and that could be helpful, I think. So we try and identify different pathways that's to do with a certain kind of disease, what kind of proteins are involved, what maybe genetic elements are involved, like your DNA, so that captures all your different characteristics like your eye color, your hair color, things like that. And perhaps if these proteins are involved in disease, can we inhibit aspects of those proteins? All right. So you begin to form a hypothesis there. You're saying, okay, because this thing is involved, perhaps if we block it, we'll be able to prevent this particular action from taking place. Okay. So the outcome of all of that is that you select a target, something that you're going to focus on, something that you're going to design your compound against to inhibit or enhance its action, whichever that may be. And don't be surprised, that can take, so the whole process of drug discovery can take 12 to 15 years, perhaps even more, and cost over $1 billion. So you can imagine how much money goes into it, because we need to make sure it's safe, we need to make sure it has the exact activity we want, and all of that stuff. Okay, so I've just included here a brief overview, brief diagram that I've taken from this article, so you can search for the article, or if you're interested in things like that, contact me later and I'll send you a link. Just showing you the whole process from basic research, lead discovery, preclinical development, then go to the clinic, and then trying to get approval for. All right. But the focus for today would be just around the basic research. So all I aim to do here is just to give you an insight into it. So I can't possibly cover everything, but they're very capable other speakers on the panel today who will delve into other aspects of this pathway and give you more insight into it. All right. So let's say the first thing we want to do is to identify a target. We can't just start making something and then we don't really know what we're going to do about it. So in my own area, we identify something that we could focus on, that we can design compounds against. So as I said earlier, there might be DNA, there might be RNA. If you've not heard of these before, please check on Wikipedia, because I can't necessarily go into all of them right now. So these are kind of the genetic elements in your body that, we have things like the messenger RNA, which are involved in producing proteins. So all your antibodies, things like that, are proteins. The enzymes that digest your food, they're all proteins. And very relevant in this time, so the spike, what we call the spike protein, what is called the spike protein in SARS-CoV-2, so the virus that causes the COVID-19 disease, that has been targeted by some companies to try and prevent the virus attaching onto cells. So if it can't attach, what do you expect? It's not going to be able to enter the cell and cause disease, isn't it? So what we say, the target should be druggable, so it can be accessed by our drug. The target, when we bind our drug to it, it should have a biological response. All right. So a change in a particular situation that is, I would say, beneficial to the human host. So we're going to be thinking about things like safety and all of that lovely stuff. So this can be done in different ways. We have in vitro and in vivo tests to identify targets. We also make very much use of the bioinformatics, so using computer-based strategies to look at the structure of a protein and to design, drug mimics online. So if you're interested in IT and all of that lovely aspects of science, you can look at these things on the screen, design them in a particular way, and then see how well they bind to that particular target, or if they even bind at all. And you can begin to understand, even from this from IT, just by computerized software, if you have the desired effects that you want to have. But we're not going to stop at that. We're not going to say because it works on the computer that then we won't go through in the lab. So let's say we've have maybe a library. So a library, if you imagine a library in your school, a library of books, the same way we can have a library of different compounds. Okay, so we've tried them on the computer, and we've seen that they fit into a nice pocket in our protein, in the structure. They fit very well, like that animation has been showing. What do we want to do? So before we go, there are different methods used in identifying the targets, computer-based bioinformatics. So using things like genomic data, genetic profiles. Maybe you've heard of the Human Genome Project before, so we can dive into that. Maybe we've done some genetic surveillance of particular groups of people. We can look at that and see, okay, if we change this, what happens? Things like that. Proteomics, looking at the protein profiles of different types of diseases. You can see that drug discovery is quite a multidisciplinary subject. There are different types of disciplines involved, different types of expertise that are required. Maybe you've also had genetic association. So a particular group of people might be more susceptible to a particular kind of disease, and we want to look at that. So maybe you've heard of the BRCA1, BRCA2 genes. So if one inherits harmful, maybe changes in the gene, in one of those genes, there might be increased risks of several cancers. For example, the ovarian and breast cancer, which are more commonly known. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So all of these feed into how we kind of identify which target we're going to design a specific compound to. So the target has to be validated. So in vivo means maybe tests we do within animal cells, and then in vitro, it's more like in a petri dish. So if you imagine outside the human host, so just maybe biochemical assays, we're looking at, we'll add this compound, does it change color, things like that. So it's outside the human host, outside cells. So in that validation, even though we've got a target, we need to validate it. We need to ensure that the effects we see, the drug has an effect on the target, and it provides a therapeutic benefit, and it's safe for us to continue further research. So that's what I'm going to say about that. Moving forward, if you want to research a bit more about other methods that are used, things like immunostaining, phenotypic screening, chemoproteomics, different other things. We can look at biomarkers. There are a wide range of methods available. I can't go into all of them right now, but I thought I'd provide that for you so that if this begins to spike an interest, you can have a look at all of those much later. All right. So I'm going to now give you in the next few minutes a summary of what I do in the lab. So I mostly focused over the past maybe 5 years or so, 5 years and a bit, on peptide synthesis. So I'm sure you've heard of proteins. We all eat meat, we all eat proteins. So in peptide synthesis, we use several amino acids. So these are compounds that can combine to form peptides or proteins. And I'll show you how we do that in a few minutes. So these are some schematic representation of what amino acids are. So they're just small, tiny bits of molecules we refer to as monomers. So we can join them together with specific chemistry known as solid phase peptide synthesis. There's also liquid phase, but I focus on solid phase peptide synthesis. That just means we build it on a solid support. So if you imagine we synthesize these peptides on, often most likely on small tiny beads. They are like little grains of sand. So very, very microscopic scale, we do all of these things, and we use different chemistry reactions to achieve our goal. And We've got natural amino acids, so all the different 20, we've got 20 different types of amino acids. So you can imagine even from those, we can create a diverse, large, huge, thousands and thousands of different peptide compounds. And we also have unnatural amino acids, so the ones that don't occur naturally, they've been chemically made, and they can offer different benefits. Perhaps we want a molecule that we know can penetrate into a cell, because not all of them can do that. They need to be able to cross the barrier of the cell. So we can design it, tweak our molecules, insert some unique compound, unique amino acids that would potentially enable our full molecule to penetrate into a cell, and maybe because our target is inside the cell. So you can imagine all the challenges and how long this can take. So moving forward, oh yeah, I've already mentioned that we connect these amino acids using a series of chemical reactions. Okay, so in solid phase peptide synthesis, so imagine that our goal is to create, not just design, so we could have designed all these compounds on a computer using different kinds of software, but we need to now transfer it into the lab. Can we actually make them? Because some of them are difficult to attach to each other. So those are some of the challenges we face in peptide synthesis. So I mentioned earlier, before solid phase peptide synthesis, we have a solid support. We need to be able to link our amino acid to this. So we use something called a linker. We attach that to it. Then we are able to then form, so they are amino acids, so we can form what we call amide bonds. So we can bind the linker to that, and we'll begin to create a series of amide bonds to connect other amino acids to these ones. But when we're designing things, we don't want unwanted reactions happening. So we have different types of protecting groups to protect the site of the amino acid that is reactive. Okay, so if you imagine we're starting from this end, so we've protected that end so that we don't want other things to bind to it. So we need to be able to, once this has bound, in order for us to join another one to it, we'll cut that off using certain chemical reagents. Some of these are harmful, so you've probably heard of personal protective equipment and all of that. Lovely and exciting stuff. So we'll remove that. And then we're able to continue that reaction through a series of washing and cleaving processes, and we have our compound. So when we have two amino acids, we'll say it's a dipeptide. We have 3 tripeptides, so you've heard of tetra and all of that stuff, octa, 8. So depending on how many you make, you name it that way. And each of them can be different or even the same. All right. Moving forward, now you've made this thing. At every point when we make something, we need to be able to test that we've actually got what we want. One of the major instruments I use in the lab to do this is called the mass spectrometer. So confirm that, we've synthesized that. And how do we know? Each of those amino acids has a particular weight. So the mass spectrometer, if you combine all of them, let's say one measures 10, another one measures 20. So you know that combining those two, you're expecting something like 30 Daltons. That's the unit. So by that, we can know if we've made what we want to make. And then we need to purify it, because during that reaction, you can have other random things happening. So we need to be able to select exactly what we want. Excuse me. So we know that that is what we're working with following other research that we're going to do. So we perform screening assays, we test different properties. Remember that we don't just have one compound, we have several, hundreds to thousands, depending on how many you want to make, thousands upon thousands. There are different ways where we can speed up that process. And then we identify those which interact with the target, okay? And that give us a biological effect. So we call that hit. It should show the desired type of activity in a screening assay. There are several screening assays that we can do in the lab, in vitro, so outside of the cell. And we continue into further optimization. I'm not going to go into much more of that. So I think today we've been able to cover the target and the validation of the target, and what I've shown you that I do within that aspect, designing molecules so that we can identify several hits that we know, okay, these are promising. And then we do further optimization so that we can then have a lead candidate that then moves further into the other parts of the drug discovery process when I showed you the flow diagram earlier, and which some of the other speakers will, I think, cover, so you get a fuller understanding of that. And I am going to stop there so that I do not overwhelm you with too much scientific stuff. And I'd just like to thank Encapsulate Solutions again. Like to thank Flora for inviting me. I have, and I hope that you have enjoyed that. Any questions I will take now.
Thank you very much, Orode. Wow, amazing. It's not as easy as it looks to find that lead compound or molecule or whatever it is. So, moderator, do we have any questions?
None so far. Thank you so much, Dr. Honorade, for that.
I saw two questions earlier on.
I haven't seen, except maybe someone sent it to you directly. I haven't seen anything.
Perhaps. Let me just have a look. I think I saw two questions. Okay. All right. So one of the questions, it was said directly to me. Yeah. How can the development of drugs and research in Nigeria be empowered and the cost of production reduced?
I think from my own perspective, because I'm not a researcher in Nigeria, so I feel like there are better qualified people who are actually there who can answer the question. They know what the problems are. So when they're able to tell us the problems, then we can begin to devise potential solutions. In my short time being in Nigeria with the projects that I've encountered, I think it's making people enhancing training, number one, because from what I've heard from some collaborators, so oftentimes they have equipments, they're not able to use them. So I think that is one skill that needs to be met, is that enhancing training in some of these specialties that are required, making sure that the opportunities are available for the young people to be mentored, making them aware of the potential career opportunities in these fields, I think is very, very important, because if you don't know, you really can't function in that field. So that would be my small answer to that. If you can be more specific as to different problems, and I think the well-qualified panel on here, and we could potentially suggest.
Okay. Does anyone else in the panel
I
want
was
to
about to say
contribute?
thank you so much for that. There is someone here saying thank you very much. I loved how you simplified the topic. And there's another question here says, what is the role of herbs in drug manufacturing?
Yes, herbs, I think, are quite important. So if I answer that question from a plant perspective, so oftentimes some plants can have therapeutic potential, and then you have the role of chemists who try and extract the what's the right word now? Extract the the phrase has just flown out of my head. Extract the active component of the plant, because it might not be the whole plant. For example, I think a very common example I would refer to would be quinine, and I think that's from a specific kind of plant. So they're very important, but I feel that more research needs to be done in that area so that we can define proper doses, and we can know what the active ingredients, that's the word, the active ingredients in the plant, the active pharmaceutical ingredient of the plant is, so that we're then able, because you can't really just rely on cutting off imagine if we had trees are limited. And I think that's where the synthetic and the natural comes into play. So when we're able to identify the active ingredient in that plant and we're able to extract it, the chemists can then begin work to be able to see, can we synthetically develop this? Because you have so many people in the world and the population continues to grow. So we need to think about sustainability. So it's not necessarily that the herbs are bad and the herbs are good and the synthetic ones are bad. There are other aspects to it, I think. So they work hand in hand. So yeah, they have, every aspect has a purpose. There's the synthetic and there's the natural source of finding potential druggable compounds.
Thank you very much for that. The last question here says, are there active ingredients made in Nigeria? And are there links to drug manufacturing available?
I don't think I'm the best person to answer that because majority of my research has been in the UK.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I won't answer that because I don't know.
Okay, we'll take that possibly for a speaker from Nigeria. And then, okay, someone just put here, from your overview, you mentioned drug development can take up to 10 years. How come we have vaccine developed in a few months? Is there an exception or other process which is used with shorter periods?
I think the key phrase there would be can. And you have to remember that technology has really made things to be sped up. So you can imagine when we used to use that phone, I used to do clang. If you're in Nigeria, you press 1 to go around. Now you can easily contact someone by WhatsApp. You can speak to someone on this panel here. We've got people in Swaziland, America, different places, isn't it? So technology has played a significant advantage for us to speed up that process. That's why I said it can. So if you look at, I know I wouldn't put words into anyone's mouth. So there's potentially a reason why someone has asked that question because of the current
I thought so as well, yeah.
But my answer to that is we can send you more resources as to why, but the key thing has been technology and the amount, for example, we didn't have the Human Genome Project before. Now we have access to a wide database of genomic data that scientists can go in and funnel through and pick out relevant information that wasn't available to us before. So things like even how we extract DNA, for example, things are much, much quicker. The way we even test samples. So, for example, if you wanted to grow, the bacteria that causes tuberculosis, that takes weeks. But you can take a sample and you can perform molecular tests based on the genetic components in that bacteria, and you can be able to quickly identify. So technology is the answer. It has really expanded and shortened what we can do.
Thank you very much for that. If there are no more questions, I think we'll go to the second speaker. Flora, do you want to introduce that person? Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for those answers. The ones pertaining to Nigeria, hopefully when the speaker from Nigeria is on, if we remember, we can ask them then. All right, so we'll move on to our second speaker if there are no more questions. Our second speaker today is Dr. Yetunde Kolade. She's Regional Medical Affairs Director for Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. She's a member of the Industrial Pharmacies Advisory Group for the Royal Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain. Over to you, Dr. Kolade.
I'm going to share my screen now.
Uh-huh.
Can you see my screen? You can all see my screen now. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you especially to Encapsulate Solution for inviting us over to speak. And thanks to my colleague, the previous speaker, Dr. Orode, for delving into the initial drug discovery topic. That's highly very scientific. You could know that she really knows her area very well. So today I'm going to speak on My Medicine and I, ensuring it does what it says. So I've tried to sort of break it down because I know we have many different target audiences today. So I'm making it like a simple language. I've simplified in so many ways. So I'm hoping that you at least take something out of this lecture today. So efficacy and claims is the topic. So ensuring it does what it says. So what is a medicine? Of course, we all know what a medicine is, but the definition is that it's a substance, it's a preparation that can be used in the human body or on the human body. It can prevent, alleviate, diagnose, treat diseases, modify the body functions, and so on and so forth. So what are the major reasons why people use medicines? At times they interchange it. Some say drugs, some say medicine. So you may hear me, sort of interchanging the words today. So the first main reason is to cure disease. And we all, from Nigeria, most of us, about malaria, and it's very common there. So we all know about chloroquine, halofantrine. I lived in Nigeria for a while, so, I know most of this medication, and you also know about bacterial infection. So when you use medicines, it's to cure it. It kills that bacteria, so you're curing it. Then there's another option is for it to relieve or control the symptoms. So say, for example, you can't say you're curing headache. You can relieve, the headache, you can relieve the symptom, but you can't cure it. Your cough, you can relieve it, and gradually, it goes. So you have things like ibuprofen and paracetamol, relieves the headache, it alleviates the pain. And then you have some that, helps you to stop the disease progression. So at times you cannot really cure hypertension entirely, but you sort of use your medication to maintain it, to maintain this disease, and it stops it from progression. HIV/AIDS, same thing. There's no cure, but at least you sort of manage the symptoms and prevent it from worsening. And then you have some for preventing diseases. And you see COVID-19 now is so common. It's the in thing now, all over the world, of course. So we are familiar with that. It's a vaccination, so it prevents this disease. And the one that you may also be familiar with when we were growing up in Nigeria is the Sunday medicine. I hope you all remember that for malaria. Have you taken your Sunday medicine, so to help you prevent malaria, especially for those who are, subjective to that. And drugs are not food. They're not food. They can be poisons, they're not food. So let us, have that at the back of our mind, even as we go on. So what is the definition of efficacy and claims? So when I say efficacy and I talk about claims, I just want to define it in simple terms. So when you say a medicine is efficacious or it has efficacy, you're stating that it has the desired clinical effects when used. So let's say, I use this drug medicine for headache. It relieved my headache after use. So that means it's giving you that desired effect that you need it for. So you're targeting something and it's relieving that thing. So that means it has that effect. So I'm not saying that you've used a drug for cough, then it's curing your headache. No, because you wanted to relieve your cough, so it should be relieving that cough. Did you see where I'm going? So the desired effect. So that's why I put desired effects there. Then it also has the ability. It's the ability for that medicine to perform to a satisfactory level or expected degree. Okay, so you've used it, it's relieved you. It's not that it's half done or it's halfway there. So it has to, perform to the satisfactory level that you are expecting to perform to. And then when you talk about medicinal claims, it's interrelated. So it's a declaration about what that medicine can do. So that means you're declaring that, I have this product, it can do so, so, and so. So it's a declaration, and it's any statement. It can be an image that relates to the therapeutic benefit or the user-friendly nature of that product. So I can say, my medicine can dissolve in your mouth in 10 seconds. You are emphasizing the user benefit of that product. Or you can say, it can, relieve pain in 10 minutes. That's a claim. You are making a claim, you are making declarations that can benefit the consumer with regards to that product, that can benefit your patient, you know. So I've put an example here: relieves headache, fast, relieve in 10 minutes, it dissolves in seconds, you know. And usually it can be declared on the pack, and it can be declared on the advertisements on TV, posters, banners. So those are claims that, you know, manufacturers, you know, marketing companies, they, you know, proclaim with regards to their products. And that's why you see it on the TV. Of course, we all, when you're watching, you know, Super Story, and that advert shoots in, and we all say, let the advert be over. You know, those are the claims, you know, they are making in the advertisement. And they can be showing the image, they may show the head is red, and then later the redness, you know, reduces to like orange. So that claiming that they've relieved the inflammation or the redness, that's a claim. So claims can be also visual. So be careful, you know, when you see advertisement, all of these things, you know, it has to, that means they are trying to claim that this product, you know, is able to do what we are declaring for it to do. Okay. So for a product to have that desired effect that is being advertised, you know, there are certain things, you know, that needs to be in that product. It needs to contain the correct active ingredients and at the right level. Okay. So a typical medicinal product contains the active ingredients and other components which are known as the additives or bulking agents. I will explain that to you. So let's say that your paracetamol that you are taking, right? The actual thing in that product that is working is the paracetamol. However, you have so many other things that you add to it to be able to hold it in your hand, because the amount of paracetamol actually in that product is very small. So if we were to give you a tiny, it may just, you know, you can't hold it. So that's why we needed to put so many other things to it to bulk it up so that it can form a tablet. And so many of these things that we put is either a bulking agent, or some of these, it will help it to dissolve quickly in the stomach, you know, and so many things like that. They are known as additives. So they are not the things that actually work. It's the active ingredient in that product that is working. So the active ingredients are the effective ingredients in the product. So you have ibuprofen for headache, it is the ibuprofen. That colorful red thing you are seeing is not the one, you know, working. It's just to make it aesthetic, to make it, you know, appealing to the consumer, you know, to be able to take that. The syrups for children, you know, the sweeteners and everything that goes into it is just to make it tasteful for the children. So I hope you are beginning to understand what I'm talking about. So the medicinal product can also be branded. So I can call my own paracetamol, you know, Yetidol, or my ibuprofen Yetifen, but it's still ibuprofen that is inside that brand. So it depends on the manufacturer or the company. However, I must also let you know that different companies can add different additives to their active ingredients that may make it sort of better, or, you know, than the other brand, depending, you know, on the nature, may make it faster acting and so on and so forth. Okay, so I want you to, at this moment, note, you know, that a fake medicine, yeah, may be one that does not contain that active ingredient that we talked about. And it also can be one which contains an insufficient quantity of the active ingredient. Remember the other time I said, you know, a medicine product must contain the ingredient, it must contain it at the right level. So if it is not contained at the right level, then, you know, it can be fake. And a fake product can also contain incorrect active ingredients, which may be or may not be harmful. Okay, so I'll take this one as an example. You know, this is an example of calamine lotion. If we are all from Nigeria, we are familiar with calamine lotion, right? You know, for itching and all of that when we have pox. When we analyze this, yeah, when this was analyzed, they found that the calamine, which is the main thing, this product did not contain any calamine. It contained all the, you know, all the things. But the calamine, you know, which is supposed to work in this product, it was not there. Okay, so that means it will not have the desired effect that you want it for. Okay. Then this is another example, and this was done by myself actually in the lab, because when I was working back home in Nigeria, I was lecturing. You know, this one, when I analyzed it in the lab, I took a pack of, a pack containing halofantrine and another pack, and the two packs looked exactly the same, because this, halofantrine was my area of research. And you can imagine if I was wondering that what's happening, then I decided to go and analyze it in the lab to see why am I not getting the results I should get? Lo and behold, I discovered that the nice looking pack did not contain halofantrine at all. Look at, so number 2 and 3 are the same. Look at that number 1, it's fake. So that's how, I knew that it didn't contain the correct active ingredient. So that means it won't relieve malaria that you want it to relieve. You see? So that means number 1, which contains fake halofantrine, will not have the desired effect. So I hope you're understanding all of these things I'm beginning to, tease out for you. Because when you look at that pack, you cannot really tell by the pack, whether, it contains that right ingredient or not. Hence, you need to ensure that you're buying your product from, authentic places, not just from the side street or, from somebody who is just hawking on everywhere. You're just wasting your time. It won't work. It may not work. So what are the consequences of this? When you use all of these fake drugs, I'm not talking about, we are not delving too much into the fake today, but I felt it was important because we are talking about efficacy, yeah? So it can give you unexpected side effects. It can give you allergic reactions, drug resistance. You can imagine when you're taking antibiotic that has a very low level, yeah? It has low level. So that means you gradually develop resistance to it. And that's why we have, at times, most in Africa, we have this antibiotic resistance, antimicrobial resistance. So it can worsen even your medical condition, and it can even cause death. How many of us remember the cases of the children paracetamol in Nigeria in those days, where they switched the glycols, ethylene and propylene, they switched it, and the children started dying. So somebody thought it sounded the same, glycol, so ethylene glycol, propylene glycol. So all are linked glycol. Let me just put one, and then one, helps the other one, causes death, and that's even the additive in it. So we should be careful. So now I go to the main thing. What goes into ensuring that a product has the desired effects? So many things go on at the background, before your drug gets to that shelf. And my sister, my colleague has talked about one, Dr. Rode, is the process of discovering even the active substance. Now, when you've done that discovery and you now have the active substance, how do you ensure that it is working? How do you ensure it's going to produce that effect that you want it to have? So number 1, they have to test it outside human. That's like a preclinical test. They test it in the human beings, and that's what we call clinical studies. And then there are also various analytical tests that they undergo to be able to ensure that, that active ingredient is actually what it is. So I'll take it the first one, the test outside human, which is the preclinical test. So they can do it as a form of computerized models, and that's why my colleague have said earlier that, this computerized model has sped up so many things, many models, it's sped up many things. So it can be carried out in test tubes in form of cells, to test it on the cells to see, whether this can actually work. And then at times, some use in animals, So around half of the tested substance, which is coming from that drug discovery stage, will make it through the preclinical stage before you then get, to the humans. So you have to do all of that, because you don't just want to straight away put your drugs that you are just discovering into a human being. So you want to ensure it is safe first before you carry out the experiment in the human being, yeah? So it goes into human, and this is the human step. I wouldn't bore you too much with all of that because it's very scientific terms. Many scientific terms are there, but it is what we call clinical trials. When you are testing the medication in human beings to ensure that it is working, you are carrying out a clinical trial. And before you can do such things, the authority, like MHRA in the UK and in Nigeria, we have NAFDAC, they have to be able to certify that you can actually carry out that study, or, and then we have what we call the ethical committees also. It goes through the ethical protocols. I know I did some research in Nigeria, pharmacokinetic research, and it has to pass through the ethical committee for them to be able to say, yes, you can do this research in human. Yeah? So you have the phase 1, and that phase 1 clinical study is usually in a small number of people, and they will be healthy volunteers. This time they won't have that disease you are trying to try it on. So you are trying to see, is it safe? Is it tolerable? You are trying to determine the blood levels, which level will we have in the blood, and so on and so forth. And then we have the phase 2 clinical study where you now use actual patients and in a larger group of patients, and it can take 12 to 16 weeks. You compare it with placebo. Placebo means you give some the medication, you don't give the others, and start to compare, yeah? And then you have phase 3, and that is done in a very large group, and it can take up to 6 to 12 months in a very large population. And you are hello, where did I stop?
We can hear
Just
you.
a few seconds before
Huh?
that. Just few seconds.
So
yeah,
you heard most of it.
that's
You've
correct.
heard about phase 2, right? Have you heard about phase 2?
We heard about them doing a larger test on others.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, a larger test, that's phase 2, to determine establish the efficacy, to make sure it's effective. And then phase 3 in a larger population, that's very extensive, and it can take 6 to 12 months. And then you have phase 4, which is after the marketing authorization has been granted, it's now being used in human being and all of that. Then you begin to survey, just like this COVID vaccine now. You remember it was very quick, but now they'll be doing the survey to find out what are the side effects, how is it affecting people, the larger population, to sort of scan this safety, in a very large group. And at times, some people may want to extend the use to pregnant women, so they have to do it again, in pregnant women to sort of test ground the safety of that product. And this entire process, which my colleague have said before, can take 10 to 12 years on average. Mind you, they give them patency for new drugs. They have patency. So during that time, only that company can, sell that medication, so that they can gain back the money that they've spent and the research they've done over those 12 years and course. They will give them patency of about 20 years or so, depending on the country anyway. So otherwise, nobody will do research, right? Where are they going to get back their money? So that's that one. So I'm fine. Oops. I'm sharing screen. I'm trying to go to the next screen. Okay, great. So the next one is that, various lab tests are carried out, in the lab to ensure that the medicine is appropriate. So during that development, as we are doing it, when you have your final tablet, you are developing methods to be able to detect that active ingredient, so that when others develop the fake or whichever, you are able to quickly detect your active ingredient in the tablet that you have formed. You are developing methods to measure the right level, to determine the storage conditions, the stability, humidity. Can I store it at 45 degrees? Can I store it at 75% humidity? You do it across the span to ensure how am I going to store it? What length of time? They determine the shelf life. That's all of these things, are done. The methods are done to make sure that we are giving our patient a safe and an appropriate medication before it gets to that shelf. Measuring the solution to see, is it going to even dissolve in the, and so on and so forth. So now, what can impact the efficacy of a medicine? So now we've done all our best. We've done this fantastic product. It's going to work for you. But what are the factors that can affect that, medicine from being as effective as we are supposed it to do? So it depends on the amount you have taken. So now we give you this product. The pharmacists say, take 2 tablets 3 times daily. What are you doing? You take it only one. Say, oh, I don't have money. If I take one, yeah, that should be okay. Oh, it looks big. Some people say, this product looks big. It should be able to work. It looks big. One should be okay. And so, especially our mothers, like some mommies in Africa, like, one should be okay. It looks big enough, things like that. No, you have to take the right amount. Then the dosage interval. So they may say, take it, so dosage interval can affect it. Is it 4 times daily? You need to take it 4 times daily. If they say 6 hourly, you need to take it 6 hourly. 8 hourly, like that's every 8 hours. You need to take it every 8 hours. If they say 3 times a day, then you can take it 3 times. But if they specify that it has to be every 8 hours, you need to wake up in the night to take it, to ensure it is, every 8 hours. The purity of the drug, so it has to be at the appropriate level, or otherwise it won't work. I cannot overemphasize that. The storage, so storage can degrade the active ingredient if it is not stored properly. The method of administration, so if they say take it by injection, you take that injection, you swallow it. Just shake it, just bring it out. Let me just drink it. Whereas you're supposed to take it by injection. All of those things, can affect your speed, the duration, the intensity, the body weight of the person, and genetics, can affect. Some people, metabolize drugs quickly, some don't, all of these things can affect the age. Children versus adults, of course, don't give your child, the adult dose. If it is for adult, give the necessary adult dose. If it's for children, give the children dose. Tolerance. So when used over time, some people may, not have the same level of effect. There's what you call drug-drug interaction and drug-food interaction. So that means if you are taking any other drug, it can affect the way another drug, works. If you are taking a particular food, it can affect, your medication. So that's why you need to speak to your pharmacist. You need to speak to your pharmacist or your healthcare professional to say, these are the medicines I'm taking. Can I take this product that you have given me with these medicines? Is there any food I should be avoiding? That's as, at times they say before food, all of that. Then some diseases can affect the efficacy of a medicine. So that's why they will ask you which disease you have. They do an evaluation of your condition before giving you a particular medication. So this almost my final slide. So how can you help to avoid your drugs not being effective? What contribution can you play in your part? Now we've given you a nice medication that works. We've ensured it gets to the shelf in the right condition. What are the things you need to watch out for to ensure that your drug has the right level and is effective? Okay. Self-medication via lay referral. Oh, my neighbor has used it. The relative has used, and then you just say, Mama Symbiat, that yellow something that can I have it also? It's similar. No, I'm having the same symptom. You need to check with your healthcare professional. It may not be effective for that disease that you want to target it for. The herbal preparation, we all know this herbal preparation. It's all over. They put it on the air, they come near you, all of this. You need to watch out for that, because it's not standardized. You don't know which ones you should use, that and that. Somebody hawks things and then brings it to you. It may not be effective. Cocktails of medicine, you mix medicines together. You take akapo. That's what they call it in my country, like akapo. They call it akapo. And then you go to Orita Mefa, whatever pharmacy in the middle of the market, Agberi, and then they start putting akapo for you in the sachet. You should be careful of that. Injection versus tablets, I've talked about that. Hawking, those people that are hawking medication in the market, it can affect the effectiveness, because remember, I talked about storage condition before. So if it's supposed to be stored at room temperature, they've hooked it in the sun, it can affect the stability of the medicines and not make it work. Then inappropriate mix of herbals with orthodox medicine. So some of this herbal, they mix it with real medicine. They will put some, if you know what some people do to this herbal, whatever they are hawking, they will put plenty antidiuretics. That's diuretics. They'll put it in there, and then they say, "Oh, you will wear away all your whatever, all your disease." Whereas they've put so much wrong medicine and mixed it with the other ones. So be careful. Brand versus generic. So there's some branded, you use Yetifen, you take and go and use Orodefen, Lolafen, they all contain the same ibuprofen. Then you combine the three together, not knowing you are using the same active across the three whatever, and then you now have overdose, So be careful about that one. I've talked about drug and drug food interaction, storage in harsh condition, out of pocket. So the cheapest may not be the best for you, and it can even cause harm. So be careful. The ingredient, is the one that works. It's not the beauty. And I've told you about that halofantrine, that example. Stick to the dose and intervals. So they say 3 times daily, use it 3 times. If they say once daily, use it once. If they say 8 hourly, use it 8 hourly. Then follow the advice. If they say after food, use after food. Empty stomach, use it on empty stomach, because that means some antibiotics, food can affect the effectiveness. So, and things are like, take it at night. Make sure you are taking it at night. And finally, I just show you this example. This is my work, some of the work I did during my PhD when I was back home, and it's actually published in the European Journal of Clinical Pharmacology. So that's a very fantastic journal in Europe. So yeah, so look at that. When my volunteers took kola nut with halofantrine, we discovered that the halofantrine level in their blood fell. So that means the kola nut was interacting with the halofantrine. You see, so it supports the fact that some foods can actually affect your medication in such a way. You can imagine if it lowers the level of halofantrine to like half. Look at it. You can see the red one when you took it with kola nut. The black one line there is when you took it alone. Can you see how it dropped in the blood when you took it with halofantrine? So you see, these things are real. I just brought this thing out to tease it out for you, the reality of all of these things that we are saying today. So in conclusion, so much goes into ensuring that the drugs sold on the shelf have the desired effects. We also have to play our parts, as the end users. Together, we can make this work. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Yeah,
I saw a few questions popping up in the chat.
Yes,
so
yes. Can I just
let's go to the questions.
Thank you so much to Dr. Yetunde first on efficacy and claims. I've learned so much. But before we go to the questions, I've seen so many questions waiting for you. I just want to shout out, people from Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, Nigeria. I've seen Swaziland. I've seen USA. I've seen Kent, United Kingdom, Misham, London, and and I've seen London as well, which is still Misham anyway. So we just want to appreciate everyone for coming on. We're not taking you for granted. Someone says that was very good. I've got lots of questions, but the first question is for medical claims that will be limited to OTCs, I suppose. I'm not sure what OTC means.
Over the counter.
Over the counter. Okay, that's so good. You can say I'm not a medical person.
Yeah.
So, do you want to answer that, Dr. Yetunde, for medical claims?
So, yeah, I know where this person is coming from. So, for medicines that are advertised on the television, that would usually be over-the-counter products, because you cannot advertise medicinal prescription products on the TV in most countries. However, of course, the prescription medicines also have their efficacy and claims, and it's on the pack. You would see it on the pack. Hypertension, all of that, those are efficacious claims. So they don't necessarily have to be advertised on the TV. Anything you see on the pack that they write that it does, that means they've done it, they've gone through all the process I've talked about to ensure that it does what it says. So that's efficacy and claims.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And the second question is, how does stability affect efficacy? Is there a relationship between efficacy, safety, and stability in formulation?
Yes, there is indeed. So stability. So when you store your products in harsh condition, what happens is when we start to analyze that in the lab, you find that the active ingredients has degraded. So let's say we have something like 100% in that of the active ingredient in that tablet, it starts to drop to 90, 80, 70, under degradation. And of course, you can directly see, that of course, if you have 70% instead of 100%, it cannot have the same performance. So it will reduce the efficacy, effectiveness of that product. So that's how stability, impacts that. Then it's linked to safety also, because when there is degradation, some of this, remember that when it then breaks down, it breaks down into something else. So that's something else that it has broken down to can actually be unsafe for you. It's called the degradant. It can be, it might not be safe. So it might be linked to, safety issues and so on and so forth. So yeah, so these are some ways by which things happen. Although the most authorities, ensure we pressure test it at time to ensure that great and to see what it is degrading to ensure that those degradants is not harmful to the system. So at times most of the time the regulator will ensure, we would have looked at it to ensure that the degradants is not harmful to you, But however, that is why they let you know that don't store it under this condition. If you store it above 25 degrees, it can degrade, and so on. Yeah, that's how it relates to each other.
Thank you very much for that. Now, this is a comment from a participant. It says, regarding vaccine availability of funds and technology, no pharmaceutical company pours huge amounts of money unless there is a possibility of profit. Regarding, there was a large injection of money by Western rich countries, so the company are not taking risk financially. I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, but that is a comment.
I'm not sure. So what this person is trying to say is,
they can't do
I'm not going to talk about COVID vaccine because that's not my field. I don't know what has happened behind the scene, but I can let you know that, when manufacturers do take risks, so because you can imagine the amount of effort they pour into getting you that new product. So it's also a risk. It may work, it may not work. So they may have lost some things in the process. It's not that they, at times they may collaborate with the government and things like that as a background and so on and so forth. But, it's always a risk also, because we work with the academia and all of that, first of all, to be able to get you, that single ingredient may take years. So there's always a background effort and money and things, poured behind the scene on these things.
Thank you very much. Now, the last one says, second to last, what factor determines the dosage interval?
What factor? So the factor that will determine the dosage interval is the duration of action. So the duration of action, and there are so many things that can affect the duration of action. So there may be, and my sister Dr. Lola Dabiri will talk about that later. It can be, there's some products, which they formulate in such a way to last long for a whole day. And that's what they call the slow release tablets, so that it's released, over time to be able to last 12 hours. There are some that will last 6 hours. So it depends on the duration, and that's all the testing they'll be doing during that clinical phase to be able to ensure, what intervals with this product or medication have for it to be effective.
Okay,
Hope,
thank you.
I'm able to answer that.
Thank you very much. I mean, the last question is my question. I wanted to ask, this is specific to the UK. I'm not sure about other countries, but I wanted to ask in that if you had an active ingredient, I saw this on TV, I think it was last week. So you have two active, same active ingredients, but maybe one is just a well-known brand and the other one is a less known brand. And they spoke about the barcodes being the same, and that as long as the barcodes are the same, then they have both of them have the same active ingredients in them. So there's no point going for the more expensive one, a well-known brand, than the other brand. And I wanted to check if that was correct.
So, remember what I said at the outset, that you may have the same active, but some manufacturers put some other additives, in their product in such a way that perhaps it's acting faster, is, doing that. It's the same thing as brand versus generic when you go into Tesco and do this. So it depends on you. What are you buying? How are you seeing the difference? There was a time I went into Tesco, I said, this face cleaner is the same, I'm buying the cheaper one, whichever. And I switched over immediately the next time. And I'm not saying that, generics are not effective or whichever, and so on and so forth. But I'm just saying that, some manufacturers add some some extra things into it that makes it faster. We've talked about slow release and so on and so forth. So we cannot exactly, and then mind you, all these bigger manufacturers also do so much research, put so much research efforts, on the back of things, into ensuring that there's a pipeline and so many things for our consumers and patients and so on. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very knowledgeable session. In the absence of no questions, I'll pass it back to Flora, who can invite the third speaker.
There's one more question. There's a question there about supplements.
Sorry. Okay. Actually, there's still more. Actually, what can we say about polypharmacy? Cocktails at a time. What's the best counsel to patients on rational use to get the best therapeutic effect?
So, yeah, like I've talked about today, and I hope somebody has taken something out of my message today, with regards to cocktails. I've demonstrated to you how even ordinary cola nut can impact the level of the other drug. Did you see where I'm going? Ordinary, cola nut, which is food. So you can imagine, and cola nut, because it contains caffeine, mind you, it contains a high level of caffeine. So you can now imagine another medicinal product which contains another active ingredient. It can affect maybe the way that the other active is absorbed in your stomach, and so on and so forth. And they can reduce the levels of that other product in your blood. So that's why you need the pharmacist, to be able, to counsel you when you are trying to use a multi-drug. You need the pharmacist or your healthcare professional, your medic, your GP, we call it in the UK, to be your doctor, that's the word, to be able to counsel you on the medication you are taking. So if you are already taking medication, please, ensure you are telling your pharmacist, so, can I take this? I'm already taking this. And they'll be able to advise you. Because
okay, I think we've lost her there. We can't hear you, Dr. Kolade.
Sorry. Well, who is unmuting me? Somebody. So what I'm saying is that, where did you hear me up to? So I said, cocktails that I've been able to demonstrate to you before, that even ordinary cola nut, see how it impacted the, absorption of halofantrine. That graph I showed you, previously. So you can imagine when you are taking several drugs together, it maybe interact. So that's why you need a professional, which is the pharmacist or your doctor, to advise you. You need to tell them to say, I'm taking this medicine. Can I take this other one, with it? So I hope that, I've been able to educate you today, about this drug-drug interaction and how, it can impact what you take in. At times, it can shoot up the level and make it to even be more dangerous for you. So we are talking about reducing efficacy. There's still the other angle of increasing, the levels in your blood and making it to be like overdose. You see? So we need to be very careful about
Thank
this.
you very much for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, being careful as well and knowing everyone's I think you're correct in that the doctor or the pharmacist will know
Yes.
the background history of the person and be able to
Yeah.
prescribe the right one.
Yeah,
So
and
the
hence
next
the reason for this encapsulate program, I really love, and that's why when I'm a very busy person, but when she told me, I said, yeah, I really want to contribute back to my country to, to sort of enlighten them. So this awareness that we are creating is also something, because hang on, you guys are here today. I know that you're able to then translate it and, transform your voice to other people, your neighbors, your friends, and all of that. So this is an awareness program for you to be able to do that. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Flora, for bringing us all together.
Yeah.
And this one is, I take all my various supplements, and I think this is me as well. Zinc tablets, magnesium tablets, all together at once. And maybe I should add turmeric and ginger and garlic
Wow.
and everything to that. Am I wrong and affecting this efficacy? I think the person wanted to say. So
so that's the word about supplement. Supplement is a supplement. Supplement is not a medicine. It does not have, how do I put it? It's a supplement to your food. Food is still the best. They will tell you that the food is still the best option for you. You should eat your vegetables, your fruits, your this and so on. But in an occasion where you're not able to take enough, that's why you supplement. So it's a supplement. Some people, in Nigeria, we often see so many WhatsApp things to say, oh, take that for your cancer, take this for your.
and someone's muted again.
Okay. Sorry, I start again. I'm saying that food is still your best option. A supplement is a supplement. A supplement should not be a substitute for your food. Okay, it's not a substitute. It's just supplementing it in case you've missed, some of these ingredients. And I'm saying that a supplement is not a medication for cancer, for this, for that. It's not. So we often see it on WhatsApp to say, oh, for your COVID, take ginger, this, take that one, and they mix a cocktail of so many, things together, which is not even certified or standardized. So I'm not saying stop your supplement, but what I'm saying is it's a supplement. It shouldn't prevent you from taking your medication, which has been prescribed to you by your pharmacist or your medic. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Someone added that 2 tablets, exactly what you said, containing the same ingredients will not necessarily be bioequivalent. The generic may be cheaper, but it may not have the same bioequivalence with the innovator product. So I'm guessing they're just saying that some would add more value, to the product. And I think the question from me, Dr. Lola Dabiri wanted to comment on Dr. Kolade's response. So, Dr. Lola,
it is not. So I comment on that one. Yeah, I comment on where you're going. Some generics may be bioequivalent, to some product, and in fact, that's why at times it's called generic, and that's why most authority would, register products on the basis of bioequivalence. But it may not necessarily be bioequivalent to so many other types of branded, depending on the branded, which I've said before. Some are faster, some are this, and so many other, added benefits and all of that. But, most regulators will usually register generics on the basis of bioequivalence. So it now depends on what you're comparing it to. So that needs to be clear. What are you comparing it to?
Hopefully that person understands. Thank you
important.
very much. Thank you. And the last question is, because now we need to move on, can the contact change in temperature for, I think she's answered this already. Someone is talking about the storage of the medicine, that the change in temperature, does it affect the medicine? And I think she's speaking from the example of power in Nigeria is not regular. But I think, I think,
I've done analytical before. I've been in an analytical position before. So I can tell you outrightly that temperature does affect, because before we put that product on the shelf, we test all these product at different temperatures, and you can see the difference. So for sure, most of the time, temperature and all of that would affect the stability and the degradation of your product. So you need to be sure you are storing it at a particular, but at times, what happens is that some, especially in some countries where, you know, some of these medications may be very scarce, yeah, maybe very rare, scarce. They usually contact the manufacturer to be able to say, oh, actually, I've studied it, so can you please help to let me know whether I would have degraded up to a level where it can not be taken, and whichever, and they can always look at the scientific, you know, data and be able to tell you whether it still falls within the efficacious range. You see, so it depends.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Dr. Yetunde Komolafe. I'm sorry, Kolade. I don't know where I got that name from. Kolade. I apologize. Thank you so much. Before we call on the third speaker, I'll call on Dr. Lola Dabiri to just give her our comments, and then we pass it on to Flora. Thanks, everyone. Is Dr. Lola here?
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Yes, I just wanted to pass a comment with regards to the, I know someone already passed a very appropriate comment about the inequivalence and of products that might be bioequivalent. Now, I just wanted to give a very, an example that I believe would strike a chord with most people, especially in Nigeria. Years and years ago, there was this advert that was claiming, it was saying, if you know be Panadol, you know be Panadol. I don't know if you remember that, you know, and it was well aired. And what they were trying to say, because then Panadol, they held the patent, you know, that was the brand. They held that for such a long time. And then, of course, paracetamol was coming in and people were going for the cheaper option. So the manufacturers of Panadol were saying it cannot, is not, if it no be Panadol, it no be Panadol. What they meant, this is what we call in pharmaceutics, we call it inequivalent bioequivalence. And that means that both products does have paracetamol in it. However, because of the specific, I'm going to be going into that later when I'm talking about the formulations, but because of the way that these medicines have been bound together, so we've got the mixing stage of tablets. We've also got the time that they would actually be compacted together into that shape. Now the brands have the secret to it. They know the exact amount of minutes they have bound it together for. They know the exact amount of minutes they've mixed it for them to get the effect, to get this medicine to work at a particular time. So it affects the dissolution, the disintegration rate of the Panadol when you take it, how quickly it disintegrates. And then after disintegrating, it will now dissolve, go into solution. The timing for that also affects when it gets absorbed. And then it now actually affects how quickly it gets into what we refer to as steady state in the body for it to start to work. So those are the different things that affect. So yes, both of them, both Panadol and paracetamol, will still get to steady state. However, Panadol will get to steady state faster than paracetamol or the generic that is got from another place. And that means that Panadol will start acting faster.
Great.
So that is it. But I'll talk more about it when I go into the formulation part. But I just wanted to touch on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that session. Thank you so much, Dr. Dabiri. We are going to, actually, the part 2 in May, we will talk about the actual processes, what the body does to the drug and what the drug does to the body. Okay, so let's go to our third speaker. Her name is Mrs. Omos Oluloyo. She's an experienced pharmacist with a wealth of professional skills and knowledge from various arms of pharmacy. She's worked within industry, she's worked in primary care, she's worked in hospital. She's an independent prescriber as she manages hypertension review clinics as a senior clinical pharmacist in a GP practice. She's also passionate about educating the public on medication safety, as well as how to get the best use from their medicines. So today she will educate us on steps taken to ensure drug safety before and after marketing. So you see, the people that are on this panel are all passionate at making sure you make better choices about your health. So over to you, Almost. I've asked you to unmute.
Okay.
And you should be able to share now as well.
Share. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's coming up. There you go.
So just bear with me.
Slideshow?
Yeah, coming. There we go. Can you see that now?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to speak with you guys. So my name, as Flora said, my name is Omos. I'm a pharmacist in a GP practice. I've worked in a number of different pharmacy settings, but today I'm going to be speaking to you about drug safety and pharmacovigilance, PV for short. So with regards to drug safety and pharmacovigilance, vigilance basically means to watch closely or monitor in order to avoid danger, and that's in any setting, medical or otherwise. And then the pharmaco bit is just medication. So basically pharmacovigilance put together is that we're watching and monitoring medication before it's authorized by the health authority or after it's been marketed. There are a few questions that we should have before we take any medication. And the main ones are, is the medicine right for my condition? How do I take this medicine and for how long? Is the medicine safe for me? And what reassures me of this? And this is what I'm going to be talking about. So whenever you're taking any medicines, these are the things that you should be thinking about if you're getting medication from the right sources, is that all of these steps have gone into producing and making sure that the medicine is safe for you. So what steps have been taken to make sure? And also, finally, are there any side effects that I should be worried about? Okay. I'm just going to talk briefly about the history of drug safety worldwide and what, because at the end of the day, you think, well, why do I need to be concerned about whether or not this is safe for me so far as it's treating what it has been prescribed for? So far back as 1906, there was a US act that came out to say that all pharmaceuticals should be pure and free of contamination. But then what did that mean? Further down the line, a few years later, there were 107 deaths from a particular case where they had used a product to solubilize another product and given it to patients. And unfortunately, 107 people died. And that sort of made the regulatory authorities, the government, start to think, actually, we need to do stuff to make sure that everybody's working to the same level of standards. So in 1938, the Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act was formed, and it promised that any drug would be safe before it was marketed. And as a result, new drug applications were started so that any drug that was going to go onto the market had to have met certain criteria. In 1958, this is a very popular point where medication safety was really taken seriously. I'm sure you're all probably familiar with the thalidomide case. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can now. Thank you.
Sorry, I was talking about thalidomide. It was a sedative drug that was promoted as a wonder drug that could treat so many different illnesses. So it could treat headaches, it could treat insomnia, depression, as well as morning sickness in pregnant women. And unfortunately, what then started to happen was there were cases being reported that pregnant women who took it for morning sickness were giving birth to babies with fetal abnormalities or even having miscarriages. And unfortunately, there happened to be over 4,000 cases that were reported worldwide around that time. I think over time, they realized it was almost 10,000 babies that were born with deformities or stillborn. As a result, the drugs were withdrawn from the German and the British markets. Further on, also prompted different reporting systems, and the famous one, I'm in the UK, so I'll speak a lot about the UK, the yellow card reporting system, which is basically a system where if you're taking a medication, anybody can report this. If you Google yellow card UK, you can report a side effect or an adverse drug reaction, and I'll explain a bit more later what an adverse drug reaction is, to the government or to the health authority, to say that this is a medication I'm taking and this is a side effect. And it goes into a general pool of information. The EU also issued a directive with regards to thalidomide, and they were able to establish and maintain a high level of protection for the public in the EU. In 1968, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
It keeps saying that I'm being muted. So the WHO program started for international drug monitoring. These are just some examples of medications that have been withdrawn over the years, and as a result of lots of different side effects. So I mentioned the thalidomide one, but then if you look, you might recognize some of these other drugs, and you can see the reasons why they've been withdrawn from market. And this is after they've been licensed. So I'll explain the importance of post-marketing surveillance, because that helps to support whether or not a drug should still be on the market. There's always a risk-benefit analysis that needs to be done. It's beneficial in that it's treating the disease that it's meant to treat, but it's also risky. But if the risks are greater than the actual benefit, say for example, you want to treat hypertension, the person has high blood pressure, but the medication you're giving them is going to cause their foot to fall off, then what's the point? So yes, they have low blood pressure, but they can't walk. So you have to weigh those things to determine whether or not, and if it becomes very common, if it's not a rare side effect, then the authority would look into it and decide whether or not the marketing license of the medication can still be issued. Between 1960 and 1999, there were 121 drug withdrawals from the market. 31% of those had less than 2 years post licensing, and 50% of those were less than 5 years of their market life. So this goes to show that monitoring medication after it's been licensed is actually quite important. If you're interested in knowing more about medication that's been withdrawn, if you type in list of withdrawn medication onto Wikipedia, then you can always find a list, and I believe that list gets updated as it happens. Why drug safety? No medication is completely safe. They will all have some element of side effects or associated risks. It's a case of determining the risk versus the benefit and see whether or not it's beneficial. There's ongoing processes to make sure that medications worldwide are safe and effective. And also a variety of steps go in to make sure that this happens in the developmental stages and also in the post-marketing stages as well. These processes are continuously monitored by both the regulatory authority and the manufacturers, and they both have vested interests in making sure that the medication is safe. And I'll explain a bit more as we go on. But what we need to remember is that the main aim is to prevent adverse events and reduce the frequency of unnecessary side effects when taking any medication. I'm sure when you take any medicine, the least thing you want to happen is for it to give you a side effect, whether or not it's treating the condition that it was prescribed for. So there's some basic terms that have been banding around, but I'm just going to explain these a bit better. An adverse event is basically anything that happens whilst you're taking the medication. It doesn't necessarily relate to the medication, but it's something that needs to be recorded. For example, if you have a side effect, so you have an undesirable sign or symptom, it's not necessarily listed as a side effect of the medication, but it happens whilst you're taking the medication. Other things that can happen, an accident or death or a disease. Say you're taking drug A and you happen to develop cancer, but cancer is not listed as one of the side effects. It'll be recorded as an adverse event. The most important thing to remember is an adverse drug reaction, and that's what happened as a result of the medication that you're taking. So the WHO's definition of an adverse drug reaction is a response to a drug that is harmful and unintended and occurs at doses normally used in humans for prevention, diagnosis, or treatment of disease, or for modification of physiological function. So basically a causal role is suspected. The drug is what is causing this reaction in the patient. Other terms that you may hear is a serious adverse event, and that's basically a combination. It's either an adverse event or an adverse drug reaction that's associated with death, it's life-threatening, causes you to be hospitalized, can cause congenital abnormalities. So for example, the thalidomide cases I was talking about, those were serious adverse events, and they're medically significant. A side effect is an unintended effect of a pharmaceutical product that occurs at doses normally used in man and is related to the pharmacological properties of the drug. So a side effect is basically an adverse drug reaction. A SUSAR, if you ever hear this term, is basically a serious, unexpected, or suspected adverse reaction. So it's serious, it's not included in the product characteristics that have been listed with the marketing authorization of the medication, but it has a suspected link to the drug. And then a life-threatening reaction is of immediate concern or attention. For example, anaphylaxis, which is basically a very serious reaction to, say, for example, penicillin, where you are not able to breathe and medical attention is needed immediately. So, post-marketing surveillance, there's a variety of sources where information is pulled from. Pre-marketing, this is pre the drug going onto the market and used freely for doctors to prescribe for patients or for patients to buy from pharmacies. And this information comes from preclinical studies, so animal or in vitro studies or in clinical studies. So the studies that the first speaker was talking about, where they happen in the lab before it actually gets into human beings. And then in clinical studies where it actually gets into human beings, but from a small group to a bigger group to a very large group, and those are in the different phases. And then the other source of information we have is post-marketing information. And this will involve spontaneous reporting. So spontaneous in the sense that anybody can report it anywhere, wherever you are, but it all gets reported into one system. The regulatory authorities in the different countries can report side effects or adverse drug reactions from the medication. You can also get published medical literature that will list these side effects. Contractual partners, so hospital, trial sites, investigators, and when I say investigators, so GPs or clinicians that are prescribing this medication for the patients, they will be classed as investigators, and also clinical trials. So in the post-marketing surveillance, so the company that makes the medication will still want to know what's going on with their medication in the larger population. So if you think about it, in their clinical trial, they've used maybe 3,000 patients or 3,000 volunteers to test the medicine. When it then goes out post-marketing, so from 3,000 to worldwide, so then they have a much larger population, and then they have a greater chance of determining what the actual real side effects can be. The data is collected for other purposes and put into lots of into the main database. This is just the visual to show you drug discovery and sort of the aspects of, like the first speaker was saying, you start with so many different compounds. So for us to get to that one compound, it could be that they've streamlined from as much as possibly 10,000 compounds. And then they'll go into stage 2 where it becomes a smaller cohort of compounds. And then you narrow it down and you keep narrowing it down until you get one that is doing what you want it to do. And in all these stages, drug safety is extremely important, and it's also monitored. As you can see here, the length of time it takes for the processes to happen can vary. But at every stage, especially in the clinical development and stage 3, drug safety is taken quite seriously, because this is the point at which real patients are going to start using the medication. Before it's marketed, it's still called an investigation medicinal product, and post-marketing, it's then called obviously a marketed product. So the main benefit of post-marketing surveillance is that there are limitations of clinical trials. So pre-approval, the limitation, and the main one is that the population, the size of the group that you're using is quite small. If you're going to use your drug worldwide, think about the amount of people there are in the world, and you're only testing it on 3,000 to maybe 5,000 patients. That's a very small percentage. And the chances of you knowing everything that can happen when you're taking this medication is quite slim. Sometimes you can have a larger test group for vaccines. And I just put that in there because of the current situation so that you understand that they can extend the quantity of people they're testing the stuff on if it's something to do like with vaccines. In clinical trials, the narrow population usually doesn't include special groups. And what I mean by special groups are, for example, the elderly, those with organ problems. So if you have kidney problems, if you have liver problems, heart problems, they tend not to put you in clinical trials because there's no way of them guaranteeing that this is not going to make your condition worse. If you're pregnant, obviously, they wouldn't do that because they have no evidence, no previous evidence to show that it's going to be safe for you and the baby. And also little children, it's usually unethical to trial on new compounds on the pediatric population. That's not to say that it doesn't happen, but some drugs can happen, especially if your target market is for the pediatric population. But you must also remember that the test group tend to be perfectly healthy individuals. But then who you're going to treat after it gets marketed is usually people that are not well. So that's one of the limitations, and that's why post-marketing surveillance is quite important, because then you're using it in the real set of people that you want to treat, and that's where you get the real data from. Also, the indication for which the medication is being licensed, sometimes it's not covered in the actual clinical trial. So there'll be a condition, they're testing to see whether the medication is safe. Whether or not it treats the actual disease, sometimes it's not important. It's just checking, if I put this in a human being, is this human being going to be okay at the end of the course of treatment? That's what most clinical trials will be doing. Later on, once they find out that it's safe, then they'll start testing doses. And then at the doses they give, they'll be like, oh, actually, it was safe at this dose. And then we saw that, okay, yes, it brought down the blood pressure by however many millimeters of mercury. That's just an example using hypertension, which is my area of expertise. Another limitation for clinical trials is that the duration is usually quite short, so usually 1 to 3 years. But in real life, you could be taking this medication for a very long time. The larger the population, the more chances of detecting the adverse drug reaction. And I think I've repeated that. If you take anything from this, is to remember that the main point is to make sure is to keep patients safe. Adverse drug reactions are usually classified as either an augmented reaction or a bizarre reaction. So augmented is that you can predict it from the known activity of the drug. And this tends to happen during early research. It's usually common, it's dose related, but with low mortality, and it's usually reversible. So if you stop the drug, then that side effect gets stopped. The other one is a bizarre one, which is unpredictable and it's rare. So often it happens in less than 1,000 people per year, and it's usually dose dependent. But then the downside is that it can have high mortality. For example, anaphylaxis, which I explained earlier with, say, penicillin. There are other ways of classifying adverse drug reactions. So you can also have what we call a chemical reaction, but this is also really an augmented reaction. And then you can also have a delayed reaction where a long time after taking the medicine, it's still having an impact on your body. And an example is developing vaginal cancer in offspring of mothers who received this drug during pregnancy. And I think if I just touch briefly on the COVID vaccine, I think a lot of people's hesitation with it is the long-term safety profile. So the fact that it's safe in human beings is a good thing, but nobody can confirm whether or not there's a delayed reaction. And I think that is what tends to be the hesitant factor with a lot of people. So why do we monitor after the drug has been marketed? Data collected during trials, pre-marketing is not enough to cover all aspects of drug safety. I think I've said that, and this is just me repeating that. The tests carried out in animals don't necessarily always predict the safety in humans. So yes, it was amazing at doing what you wanted it to do before you put it into humans. The minute you put it into humans, the body has eaten it up, acid in the stomach has reduced it, it's not working the same way you wanted it to work. So that's why we need to monitor. I mentioned earlier that clinical trial patients are pre-selected and they're limited in number. And they're pre-selected and tend to be healthy individuals because they would cause less trouble for the manufacturer. The conditions used differ from real world, and the duration of the trials is limited. Also, information about serious adverse drug reactions and use in special groups is often not available pre-marketing. So you have to monitor post-marketing. And you'll also notice that drugs, when they're initially marketed, you'll have an update to the license a year or two after. That's when they've had a big influx of new adverse reactions that have happened in the real world. The impact of adverse drug reactions is can be quite bad. You've got it's the fourth to the sixth leading cause of death, depending on which country you get the data from. Up to 19% of patients will have an adverse drug reactions. Most of them tend to be mild, but some of them can be serious or severe. And 70% of adverse drug reactions are preventable. And you can get an adverse drug reaction for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's as a result of you yourself not doing the right thing. So as Dr. Kolade was saying, they ask you to take a medication 1-3 times a day. You decide to take all 3 in the morning because you don't want to forget the other 2. That in itself can cause an adverse drug reaction. A high percentage of patients that go into hospital tends to be, unfortunately, as a result of an adverse drug reaction from a medication. So not necessarily life-threatening, but it's medically significant that they need to go into hospital to be treated. The other thing is that it can be really costly for both the individual health-wise and also financially for the individual and also for the manufacturers and for the health authorities. 6 to 7% of hospital admissions in the UK are due to adverse drug reactions for a variety of reasons, which we've touched on, both myself and the other speakers. And also there's the point of liability. The company that makes the medication and holds the marketing authority, the marketing authority holder is liable. There's a lifelong impact on both the patient, the manufacturer, the marketing authority holder, and also health bodies. So it's very important for us to monitor adverse drug reactions. The benefit of post-marketing surveillance is we can detect them once the medication is in open market. Imagine if we just released it into the world and we never monitored. Then if it's causing havoc in a certain group of patients, we will never know, but we'll keep prescribing it for them and it'll be unsafe and it'll just be a snowball effect. But if we monitor and we see that, oh, by the way, this medication in patients whose kidney function is not great, it's actually causing their kidney function to become worse, then that helps us because then we can make a adjustment to the information about the medication. Is that if a patient has kidney problems, they can take this medicine, but at a lower dose. So it will still be effective, but because their kidneys are not flushing it out as quickly as possible, you can still give them the medication, but at a smaller dose. And we find out this information from post-marketing surveillance. We can also quantify the risks. Risk factors in new population can be identified. So we can say, like the same example I gave with the kidney function is that, yes, it may affect their kidneys, but because the benefit is greater than how much it will affect the kidneys if we reduce the dose of the medicine, then it can still be a good thing to give the medication. It prevents patients from unnecessary effects of medication. The responsibilities of post-marketing surveillance tend to lie mainly with the marketing authorization holder, and that's basically the company that manufactures and markets the medication. They're responsible for timely collection of data, recording and reporting of data systems, and it must always be up to date. Because if, say, for example, I want to prescribe something, I need to know that the information that is out there is up to date and it's not 2 years old. The appropriate assessments of the data for completeness, seriousness, and medical significance must be done by the marketing authority holders so far as they hold the patents for that medication. And they must always have prompt reporting of the data to any regulatory authority so that a proactive risk management and assessment can be done. When they receive the information, they themselves have to assess the adverse drug reaction that information that they get. What organs are involved? Is it serious? And what's the duration of the adverse drug reaction? Is it something that we need to act upon now? So basically, if we find out that this medicine is causing people to die, you want to act ASAP because you want to let the authorities know that anybody prescribed this medication either needs to stop or needs to be weaned off it because there's a risk of death. Because yes, you want to feel better, but not 6 feet under. So they need to assess that what caused it. Is it related to the drug? Were we expecting it? And is it based on the safety profile of the drug? Is it medically significant? Do they need to report it? And to whom should it be reported? These are all important things when you're assessing an adverse drug reaction. Reporting the adverse drug reaction, why do we report it? It's ethical and it's a regulatory or legal requirement. Who are we as a marketing authority holder reporting it to? Or as even the general public? We report it to the manufacturer, the investigator who holds joint responsibility, either during the trials or post-marketing, to the patient or the medical personnel who has prescribed you this medication. When do we report it? If it's a serious one, it should be expedited, so within 7 to 15 days, or there's periodic collection of data. So it's an ongoing thing, but the frequency is depending on where in the world the product is launched, because different health authorities have different requirements. And what are we reporting? The patient's details, the suspected drug, any other treatment that the patient is on, details of the suspected reaction, and you yourself, the reporter or investigator, details, not because they want to prosecute you as the prescriber or whatever, but so that if they need extra information, they can come to you. Importantly, regulations are different in every country, so you must be aware of the country in which you are. This is just an overview of pharmacovigilance, is that we collect, we collate, we analyze, and then we communicate based on the severity. So it's just a diagram showing how all the different bits of information come through, and then it's reviewed, and then you generate a signal based on the severity, and then you action what needs to be done once it's been analyzed, but it has to be promptly done. This is just another visual to show you that the patient is having the medication, an adverse drug event happens, the reporter has to input this information, either verbally, written, to the company that makes it, and then the health authorities then decide what needs to happen based on the severity of the adverse drug reaction. So just bringing it back home, I'm Nigerian, even though I'm in the UK, so I'm sort of talking about NAFDAC, which is the Nigerian Agency for Food and Drug Administration. And their website, I'm not sure, I think these slides are gonna be saved and can be shared after, but the links, you can click on the links or Google NAFDAC, and on their websites, they have recall and safety alerts. They also have pharmacovigilance and post-marketing surveillance guidelines. So if there's something that you're interested in and want to read up a bit more about, then they have some information on there. The other thing I wanted to, if there's a drug that you want to check whether there's a safety alert about it, you can always go on there and find out whether or not there's something that you should be aware of. There's also a newsletter that you can subscribe to, and that's the email there if you would like the newsletters delivered directly to your email. And it basically is a newsletter, and it gives all of this information, educates you on medication safety issues that are important to Nigeria. Finally, you as an individual can report an adverse drug reaction, whether or not you're the prescriber, the patient, the relative of the patient. Even if it's something that's listed, if you're taking it and you are concerned that it's causing this reaction, you can report it. So you go onto the NAFDAC website and you can report it electronically. There's an e-form there, and I've just screenshot as well what the e-form looks like. And the reporter on there is it can be you taking the medicine, it can be you, the prescriber, it can be you, the manufacturer, and it's just basically inputting the information, like I said, so that everything can be analyzed, because you might get a headache from something and you think, okay, it's nothing. But if 10,000 other people are getting a headache, then the company knows that this is definitely a side effect of their medication. So it's basically collecting lots of information from lots of different people to make it into the database and make the company aware that this is important. It's an important adverse drug reaction. So in summary, the main aim of drug safety and pharmacovigilance is to make medicine safer for all. We can all play our part, and also to improve confidence in licensed medication. So I hope that I've explained that a lot of things go on behind the scenes to support marketed and authorized medication. So when next you're taking medication, think about it that, is it a licensed medication I'm taking that it's been through the process and the safety of it has been guaranteed? If you take it and there's an adverse drug reaction or an adverse event that happens, you can always report it, and you can always find out as well. Any medication that you get should come with a patient information leaflet. In there will be a list of side effects and possible adverse drug reactions, the common ones, the uncommon ones, whether or not you should take half the dose if you have whatever's wrong with different organs of your body. Make sure you read it. It also has information about the market authority holder who you can contact. Nowadays we can contact everybody via email. Just Google them and you can email, and they'll show you where to submit information about any adverse drug reactions. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you, Amos. That was fantastic. Bumi, questions.
Yes,
Over to you.
Thank you so much.
There are quite a few.
Amos. I've got a bit of questions for you. The first question is, I agree that we must trust our generics because generic prescribing is the globally accepted form. Every drug undergoes bioequivalence.
And we will deal with that. The next speaker would.
Okay.
Bumi,
Okay.
Bumi, the next speaker will deal with that. Let's go to the other question.
Okay. So the other question is, how can the information regarding the problems of self-medication and drug interaction be sold to the Nigerian public?
Sorry, read that again. How can
the information regarding the problems of self-medication and drug interaction be sold to the Nigerian public?
That's a tough one. I think because it will probably have to do with, unfortunately, something bad happening, and so almost like a shock factor, where people, because we do a lot of self-medication for a variety of reasons, previous experience or what people can afford. So unless there's a national campaign to inform people that such is not appropriate, then I struggle to, maybe Dr. Kolade might be able to explain a bit better because she's worked in Nigeria more than I have.
And Dr. Kolade, do you want to add to that? I would just say maybe awareness as well. We just keep, making ourselves aware. We've come here now. We've got families back home. Maybe after this discussion, pick up the phone, speak to your families back home. I think it's easier when they hear from you as well. Yeah. And kind of let them know what you've learned today. We're Nigerians. I think we just have to keep going, start talking, start sharing. It's not just in Nigeria. I think it's everywhere.
There are Africans. There are more, there are people. The Nigerians are here, but there are Africans on here too. Other countries in Africa. So
it's everywhere.
Yes, we're all African. Yes.
Yeah. Generally, as people, we also learn from the come and see mentality. So and to stick with us when you hear, oh, come and see, oh, this is what happened. So unless unless we see a situation where it has happened before. And it's a case of, and those situations have happened. It's just a case of highlighting them and creating the story. So people are then interested and there's a hook and they understand the importance and the significance of the not paying attention to the right things.
Thank you. Does anyone else maybe want to add to that? Maybe one to people?
Aishat, from Aishat, do you want to add to that, or any one of the panel quickly, so that we need to move on? If there's anyone else that wants to make a comment, are there any more questions? I think there are more questions. If no one wants to make a comment,
there is one more question, and it says, how can people in other African countries report ADR?
Okay, so I would suggest the simplest thing is to Google who your Medicines Health Authority is in your country. So they should all have a website, and on there, because that's how I even found out about the NAFDAC one. It wasn't because anybody told me. I just Googled Nigerian. I knew that NAFDAC existed. So I just went on and I Googled drug safety, adverse drug reactions, NAFDAC, and all of these resources came up. So I would suggest whichever country you're in. If I Google that for the UK as well, the MHRA would come up, which is the Medicines Health Regulatory Authority in the UK, and that's the body in the UK that will come up. I'm sure if I did it for America, the FDA would come up. Whichever country you're in, that would be the best way to Google. To find out the information is to Google and to see what the name of your regulatory body is, and they will have information about reporting adverse drug reactions. The other thing is to speak to your healthcare provider, because they should know. Whoever is prescribing the medication, either the pharmacists in your country, the doctors in your country, they should know who you report an reaction to, especially if it's not one that's listed in the side effect leaflet that has come with the medication.
Thank you very much. We've got comments saying very informative. That was awesome. Very informative. Thank you. And then the awesome presentation from all speakers. The last question is NAFDAC overloaded and so ineffective in the monitoring of adverse drug reactions? Should a separate body be formed to make it more effective?
So this sounds more like a political question. I would say the honest answer is I don't know the workload that NAFDAC have. I assume that, well, my assumption as well is that they probably have a wide, and they're more like an umbrella body. So in as much as they run the show, they will have a smaller body that is looking specifically at adverse drug reactions from medication. And then they will have some, so drug safety in Nigeria, whenever they hear, hear drug safety, they sort of think, drugs as in hard drugs, but prescribed or even over-the-counter medication, any medicine that is licensed and sold, there's a drug safety aspect behind it. So because it has been through all these rigorous tests, and the manufacturers have a legal responsibility to have post-marketing surveillance on this medication for however many years that they hold the patent, because if God forbid anything happened as a result of that medication, guess what? They're liable. So they have to have a vested interest. So the company itself is one part, but then the regulatory authority is another part. And yes, NAFDAC is the umbrella company, but I can assure you that there will be a smaller group under NAFDAC that is assigned to look at justice and to monitor what is being reported. If anything, I think it would probably be a case of underreporting, because people are not aware that they need to do this. I mean, if you've been through the pharmacy students that we have on here, I think maybe ask your lecturers whether they are aware of a specific body in whichever country that is looking specifically at adverse drug reactions, because it's really important. Because once a medicine is released into the market, that's not the end of it. In fact, if anything, that's the beginning. Think about the vaccine that we're all taking now. This is just the beginning of the show. So for the next 10 years, it's being monitored constantly in all different groups, because in the test group, you only have semi-perfect people. Then you bring it out into the market and you have those whose kidneys are not working properly, who eats badly, who don't take the medicine as you prescribed it. They're all different groups. And you're testing it in the bigger population. So the chances of you finding out what the drug is really doing to the body is so much higher. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you so much for the drug safety and PV session. We appreciate you. Someone says some hospitals have pharmacovigilance units where ADR can be reported. And before we get on to the next speaker, can I just call on Mrs. Lawal to comment on this? I think because of it, I think she was, I remember from the last session, very proactive in Nigeria. So do you want to comment on this, please, ma'am?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be part of this, and I must commend all the speakers. You've done greatly. There is a lot of work being done on reporting in Nigeria, and there are many units and centers through which pharmacovigilance can or should be reported. But you see, we have some peculiarities generally. People don't want to report reactions when they occur. And that has been a big challenge because sometimes they just perceive it as, I want to report that company, or I want to get somebody in trouble. So we still need a lot of education to do there. We need to educate the masses a lot to help them to understand that it's not about getting anybody into trouble. It is that we want to ensure safety. It is that we want to be able to know what this drug is doing, because sometimes nobody knows it. Nobody can predict all that can happen when the drug is taken. Like you said, for the vaccines now, the surveillance will be on for only God knows how many years. And some drugs too, surveillance goes on for almost forever. But major challenge that I have found on the field is people not cooperating, people not wanting to release the information that is vital as per the reaction. Very recently, I had a case that seemed to have reacted to one of the drugs she was on, and all efforts to get me to document, because at least I should be able to say something about it, has been futile. It's like, don't worry, the person has just been evading it. So those are the areas that we need to look at. NADAC is doing a lot of work there. Pharmacovigilance, they are very serious with pharmacovigilance. And I know there was a time they were even rewarding people that were giving pharmacovigilance reports. So they really want this reported, but there's a lot of underreporting because of cultural influence and the way we perceive things generally. I think it's part of it. Then we healthcare professionals too have to do a lot more there. We need to be more vigilant. We need to encourage the people out there to tell us what is happening to them and not assume. Some people would even just sweep it under spiritual attack. They sweep it under different kinds of things. And that has grossly undermined the reporting that we do. So I won't blame NAFDAC, not for pharmacovigilance. I won't blame NAFDAC. I think the problem is us, all of us. Everybody has part of the blame to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I agree. I mean, I'm not even in the pharmaceutical field, but I
don't know.
Okay, thank you. I do agree. I'm not, but I understand exactly what you're talking about. And I do agree. And I also possibly blame a lot on religion as well sometimes. It's a factor. So I'm just going to call on Flora to introduce the next speaker to us. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for sticking with us. And thank you for engaging. The more we engage, the more we're going to learn. So let's go to the fourth speaker. Our fourth speaker is Dr. Lola. Gokedabiri. Her pharmacy career has spanned over 25 years in different continents, Africa, North America, and here in the UK. She's a visionary with a passion about medicines and total well-being. This is a common thread amongst all of us, participating in this program today. She has practiced also in hospitals, community, and primary care. She's an entrepreneur. She has her own private pharmacy clinic, Alpha Pharmacy and Clinic in Aberdeen in Scotland. So anytime you're visiting Aberdeen, feel free to pop in and say hi to her. Right, over to you, Dr. Lola. Yeah, you can unmute. You should be able to share now.
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, can you see my my screen?
It hasn't started sharing yet, but it's in the process.
Okay. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Flora. Thank you, everyone that has spoken before me. Fantastic presentations. Thank you. You've laid a very solid foundation to what I'm going to be sharing with us today. And thank you to everyone that has been engaging. I've been kind of like enjoying the questions and the participation. So thank you. One thing I just wanted to say first and foremost is that in response to one of the comments is that what Encapsulate Solutions is actually doing is one of the ways in which information is going to be passed through, like Flora said at the beginning, she started with Nigeria, now it's going to the whole of Africa. And, more and more of that would help us, to spread the information about each individual owning their own health and seeking for the information, that is necessary to make sure that they're healthy at all times, basically, So for me do we have my screen now? I'm going to be talking on.
Do you want to take it off and try again? If not, I can share from here.
I think perhaps I'll try one more time. I'll stop it and then restart.
All right. While you're doing that, if anyone's just joined us, you're all welcome. Could you please just put in the chat where you joined us from and say hello? While we're trying to sort out the slides, just say hello from and where you've joined us from.
I think you should try and share from your end. Because,
all righty. Okay. All right. So stop sharing and let me do that.
Okay. Are you doing that? So whilst we're doing that, I would, Flora, thank you for doing that. Whilst we're doing that, I'll just answer one of the questions that was posed before with regards to brands and generics, because I'm going to be talking about two main things. I'll be talking about will be formulation, and I'll also be talking about labeling. I've kind of referred to both of them as the indispensable duo. Okay, thank you. So the essentials and more is what, I want to talk to us about, the essentials and more. Now, like I said, my colleagues have gone and talked about all the things that are essential. They've talked about trying to get, all the preclinical trials, etc., which are very, very vital in the journey of making a medicine and bringing it, to consumers, so to say. Now, a key thing, could you move on, please, Flora? Yes, thank you. So a key thing in all of this, what I want to bring out to all of us out of everything, I just want to kind of help us tie all the information that we've heard this evening together. Formulation and the claims that Dr. Paladi was talking about, before any claim can be made about any medication at all, it's because it's gone through a whole process, and then they're able to say, legally claim that this is what this medication would do. And this, in combination with the formulation of that medication, is what would help us produce the label. And that's why I've said formulation plus claims will be equal to the labeling. And then the sum of, so it's like we're starting the journey from the beginning. Then there is the big reveal, which will be the claims that every manufacturer would say, this is what my product does, and then there will be the sale. But when it gets to the point of sale, what exactly is it that happens at that point? Can we move on? So, and that's what I'm referring to as the infamous duo. That is, those are actually the bedrock of everything. Because if, for example, preclinical, all the trials have been done in one way or the other, we know we need a medication to treat a certain disease and things like that. However, we're not able to make this ingredient, this active ingredient that we found, if we're not able to put it into a stable form for it to be given to a human being to use, then all of the work that has been done before, it becomes zero. And that is why the formulation is very, very important. Now, when we're talking about formulation, we have different forms in which our medicines come. We have what we refer to as solid dosage form. We've got the liquid dosage forms. We've got the parenteral dosage forms. You know, we've got intradermals and all of that. And they're all aimed at knowing exactly what to target in the delivery of this active ingredient. And that is what we call formulation. Can you move on, please? So what is formulation? Formulation is the action of creating or preparing something. So if we say we've got this active ingredient A, for example, we've got this active ingredient, we want to make it into a tablet. How do we make sure that the tablet will be stable? But what if what we want it to do is actually, we want it to, I'm going to give a very common example for us ladies, you know, say for example, we want a hormone, we want to use like a contraceptive, which we want it to only target a particular area of the womb for it to produce contraception for us. In that case, we might not want this medication to have traveled all over the body. We don't want it to have gotten absorbed into the bloodstream. And in that case, we might say, you know what, we don't want to make it into a tablet form. We'd look for another kind of delivery that would target a particular area of the body. And that's why we would have a formulation such as like the Mirena contraceptive, which would actually be inserted right and placed on the inside in a particular place. And we know that when the hormone is being released into the system, it just targets that local area. So those are the things, the questions that come up in the mind of the manufacturer when they're looking at formulation. Now, it's very, very important. Dr. Kolade talked about it, and I'm going to keep mentioning it all through this presentation, that all work is going to be zero if what we produce is not stable. And for it to be stable, that means that it's going to stand the test of time. One, is able to stay together with the other ingredients that have been put together with it, and it can remain active and effective over a duration of time, and it maintains its effectiveness over a duration of time. And that is what we mean that it must be stable. And that is why we do different experiments are done to ensure the rigor of it. That is, at this temperature, what would happen to this? At another temperature, what would happen to it? Could we move on? And this, of course, all of these things that I'm talking about, they're guarded by legal requirements in the manufacturing industry, but I'm not going to bore you with all of that. Now, what is the importance of formulation? Formulation affects the onset of action. Now, we'll look at different, if for example, we take the example of a tablet. We've got tablets, solid dosage form. We could have them in what we refer to as RIR, that is immediate release. That is, once you take this medication, it's dispersed, it goes into solution, it's absorbed, and it goes into your bloodstream and it can start working. We have modified release, that is, you know what, we don't want it to have such a quick, absorption. We don't want it to start working so quickly. We want to kind of like tailor the length of time in our body for it to act over a period of time, because the immediate release ones, it would also affect the number of times it is used during the day. Because if it is immediate release, that means that it goes into the bloodstream quite quickly, and the tendency for it to also go out of the body is also increased. So because of that, for immediate release tablets, the number of times you have to take it during the day, it's more often than for a tablet that is formulated, or a capsule that is formulated in modified release. And we also have the prolonged release. We also have what we call the enteric coated tablets. Now, the enteric coated tablets, it becomes more interesting here, because there are actually some tablets that are formulated in a particular way, that there are layers on them. They're actually put in layers so that by the hour, each layer is taken off gradually in the body, and that is why you can have it prolonged release in the body. And for enteric coated, what it means is that it is protected. You swallow it for the immediate release. Even the saliva in the mouth can start breaking down this medication because it's immediate release. It's swallowed, it goes to your tummy, it goes to your first intestine, second intestine. But for enteric coated, it is coated in such a way that we don't want it to dissolve at all in the mouth. We don't want it to dissolve in the upper part of the stomach at all. We want it to get to a particular part of the gastrointestinal tract before it dissolves. And that is why it is called enteric coated. And that we use such when we want to, for different reasons. A very important one is if you want to protect, the stomach from some of the side effects of this medication. So those are the different things, different ways in which formulation, can affect the onset of action of a tablet or any other form of medication. I've also talked about the duration of action, and then the extent of action, and storage requirements. It's very, very important. I know someone had asked the question, in Nigeria, we don't really have, light all the time and all that. Most medication, I'm going to come to that eventually when I'm talking about the labels, on medication. Now, most would say do not store above 25 degrees centigrade. And that means that you don't have to worry too much, that, oh my God, have I studied at 18 degrees centigrade? Is it going to work now? Or is it 30 degrees centigrade now? Because most of them, they will just say, don't store above 25 degrees centigrade. But for some others, they would say, definitely store between 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, and those you would know you have to keep in the fridge. Okay, so and then of course all of this, the storage requirements also affects the shelf life of this medication. And when I say shelf life, I'm saying how long can these medications be kept for them to continually be effective. On most medication, you would have it. I'm just going to try and show us. This is a medication now. This is a packaged, tablet. It's got tablets in it. On each of these, it would have expiry dates. Well, it would have the manufacturing date and it will have the expiry date. And that's what we refer to as the shelf life, basically, if kept within the recommended storage requirements. So really, what is the makeup? Yes, please, the one before. What is the makeup of a medicine? Dr. Kolade has already mentioned some of this, but I'll just go a little bit further into it. We've got the pharmaceutical active ingredients, and we've got what we call the pharmaceutical inactive ingredients. But even though they are inactive pharmaceutical ingredients, but they are functional with regards to them forming a base for which the active ingredient can remain stable. And that's why we refer to them as being still functional. Yes, please, next. Thank you. So this inactive ingredients, so to say, inactive quote and unquote, we also refer to them as excipients. Now, the word excipient is from the Latin word excipere, and that means to receive. That means that these substances, they receive to themselves the active ingredient and help it to be available at the right place and at the right time for absorption in the body and for them to do the work that the pharmaceutical work that they have to do in the body, basically. So I'll give examples just to illustrate the importance of this excipient in formulation. In Australia in 1960, there was a case of phenytoin capsule. And of course, this was years ago. I'm sure this kind of things won't happen there anymore. Anyway, for phenytoin is a medication that is used for epilepsy. And lots of it's been around for a long time, and it's quite it's one that is used widely too. Now, usually calcium sulfate, the dehydrated form of the calcium sulfate, was the excipient that was mixed with the active ingredient, the phenytoin. However, someone thought, well, we could as well use lactose, to be that the inactive bulking agent. And they did that. And they realized that lots and lots of people got so many side effects and adverse reactions, and they were wondering exactly what happened. When they looked at it, they realized that the main cause of it was calcium sulfate. It is only just slightly soluble in water. And that means that when this capsule was ingested, and it breaks down, in the body, the calcium sulfate, because it was only slightly soluble in water, in the medium, the fluid in the body, it meant that only a particular percentage of the active ingredient, phenytoin, went into the system. However, when lactose was used as the bulking agent, as the excipient in the capsule, because lactose is very, very soluble, in water, immediately it was taken, it released all of the phenytoin into the body. And because of that, lots of people got an overdose of it. So that is one, one example. Another example is a switch that happened in Panama years ago of a cough syrup, especially for children. They kind of like just used, glycerin, because they thought, oh, glycerin, that should be okay. It should be sugary, and all that, instead of diethyl glycol. And of course, they used diethyl glycol instead of glycerin. And what happened was that actually affected the liver and kidney of so many people, and especially children. So that brings me to the point of the different manufacturers that we have in the market now. I got a query from someone recently. Now their daughter is on a medication, for her kidney, and they're used to using a particular brand of a medication, and they couldn't really source that, and they wanted another option, a cheaper option. So my task was to look into this and say, can we still use this? By the time I looked at what I had to do, as a pharmacist, we have that knowledge. We can look at each active ingredient and each inactive, excipient, and say, what is the purpose of this in this medication? By the time I compared what was in it, it was just a case of one had lactose, another did not have it, etc. I was able to explain that to them, and I was able to say, both of them are going to act exactly the same way. However, the question someone said before, when I mentioned the scenario of the of Panadol and paracetamol. It's not that I'm trying to say you can't use the generic, but as healthcare professionals, we need to explain to you, because we get people asking all the time. They would say, why is it that when I take this particular medication, it doesn't work fast for me? I'm wondering why it's not working fast, whilst this other one works fast. So it's just education. It's just the information that we're giving out, that the reason it's not working as fast as some other one, maybe I shouldn't name names now, but the reason that, it's not working as another one, it might be because, they have different makeups, basically. They are bound together in a different way. So they're absorbed in the time for which they get to dissolution is different. And that is why one is acting faster than the other. However, the key to all of this is they will both act. So they will both be effective for you, and you can be rest assured. And that is what I was able to tell that mom. But yes, sure, if that is the only, one that you can get, the only product from that manufacturer that you can get, you can't get the other one. I've checked, they're the same thing, exactly the same thing in it. So you can be sure that it would work for your daughter too. So there we are. Can we move on, please? Thank you. So now I'll touch a bit on the claims. I'm going to kind of just relate this to, when Apple iPhones, when they've done all they do in their manufacturing units for Apple and they're bringing out a new phone, they make so many claims. They have, big conferences to say this is what this new phone would do. And they kind of like stir up people and know that they're waiting for this. I remember years ago when Zitromax was coming into industry, an antibiotic. Before then, we had to take 3 times a day, 4 times a day, etc. But here, Zitromax was coming, and they were claiming, that this is going to be just 3 capsules and is going to quote and unquote solve all your problems. So there was a lot of hype, with it. And that is but before they can make that kind of claim, like Dr. Koladi has mentioned, is because they've done a lot of research in the background and then they go forth to say that. Now, all of this brings me to the point of saying there is the perception, because of the things that the manufacturers will say about the medication, whether OTC, which are allowed to be advertised everywhere. For prescription medication, we can't really advertise like that. However, medical representatives, they go around the doctors, telling them this is what this medication that can do, and educating doctors, educate other health professionals. And what really affects the performance of every medication is formulation. How were they formed? And did they really target what they wanted to target? Could we move on, please? The next one. So now it brings me the label. Yeah, could you move on? Thank you. So for the label, I'm just going to talk about the 5 W's, the H. So what is the label?
I think you're breaking.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, now we can. Thank you.
Oh, okay. And did you move on, please, Flora? Thank you. So now, what is a label? A label is a written declaration of medicine is, and that identifies what the medicine is. It would have the name. Legally, there are legal requirements. It must have the name of the medication. It must have the name of the patient that this medication is for. And that's why we would say, don't take medication for other people, because it's illegal. Basically, you shouldn't take medication that is meant for other people. So you would have the name of the medication, have the name of the patient that the medication is for, and then you would have the classification of the whether it's a prescription-only medication, whether it's a general medication, it's a pharmacy medication, and then formulation it is. Is it like I was showing you this? So this is another package of tablet, and it would say whether it is a tablet, it would say whether it is a solution, whether it's an injection, whether it's a cream, all of it must be on this. And then apart from it being on this page, it would also have all from a pharmacy label. I don't know whether you can say it, that would be stuck on to aim at a particular patient that used to use it, the duration of time of use, and it should also have the date that it was given to the patient. So you would say what the medication can do and how it should be used. That is so important, how it can be used for best outcomes. Now, the packaging and the labeling of a medication, to a large extent, could actually perceptually, determine the authenticity or the quality of it, However, it is paper that never forgets. So, mention on each package and the written information on individual labels too. So that be to the point of how medication should be used, and it's all based on the formulation of this medication. I would give you an example of one of the reasons we always emphasize on using medication the right way. We've got this antibiotic, doxycycline. Do we know doxycycline? Has anyone ever had doxycycline before? Now, doxycycline is one of these antibiotics that there's a particular way in which you are to use it. You are to swallow it with a full glass of water, and you are to sit up for at least, or stand for at least 30 minutes. They would say, don't lie down until after 30 minutes. Yeah. And then another information about doxycycline is you shouldn't expose yourself to direct sunlight. So I got a situation in which a person, she had been taking her doxycycline, but then one night she had forgotten to take her second dose. And she just, as she laid in her bed, she realized she hadn't taken her second dose. So she reached out, grabbed it, and just put it in her throat and used her saliva to swallow it because it's just a white capsule, And by the next day, her throat was kind of burned. Now, at first, she didn't relate it to the doxycycline at all. She just called into the pharmacy, a service that I work at, and she was complaining of this burning effect in her throat, and she didn't know what was going on. But by the time we are trained, to find out, ask all the questions, by the time we asked all the questions, we're able to, come to the conclusion that, oh yeah, she just said it in passing. Oh yes, she took her doxycycline yesterday, but she just swallowed it with this and all that. And I was able to target that is the cause of that. She said, oh, really? Are you sure? I said, yes. I said, did your pharmacist not say that to you? Say, yes, I was told, but I didn't think it would be that serious. But it is really very serious. So the way in which the directions for use for each medication is really, really important. We've got situations in which people have swallowed, this suppositories, People have swallowed suppositories before because they didn't read the packaging. It says for anal use, to insert into the anal passage. But for some reason, some people will take it off and just swallow it because they thought it was a tablet. So it's so important to read the directions. And that brings me to the point that, for example, something like a suppository, it is formulated in a particular way to have a local action in the anal passage. So if we swallow it, definitely by the time all the gastrointestinal juices deal with it, you're not going to get any reaction from it at all. You're not going to get any response from it at all. Can we move on, please? So I've talked about the packaging. Now, the types of label, that's what I was trying to say, that we've got the normal writings on the packaging, and then we have the labels that should be on medication from the pharmacist before it leaves, so that each person would know how to take their medication. So that's the manufacturer's labels, and then we have the dispensing labels, and this all come from all the information that have been gathered, through all the studies done on this medication, and then the manufacturers are able to make solid claims, and these claims are able to go on the labels. Okay, now the targets for this, the doctors, the prescribers, healthcare professionals, they all know about this, but the end users, it's so important for this information to get to the end users, because it is the end users, the patients, the consumers that are actually, taking this medication. And if taken right, the medications would have the right response. But if not taken well, then they won't just, have the right response. Can we move on, please? So the purpose of a label is really the safe use of medicines by everyone. Safe use. Safe use. I know Almost has said a lot about that too, safety. So it's so important to use our medicines safely. And it's also another purpose of the labels is that it reflects the expectations of the healthcare professionals and the patients and the regulators. And it enhances safe selection and use. So say, for example, you've got even something simple like having clotrimazole ointment and clotrimazole cream. Depending, the cream it's water-based, while the ointment is oil-based. When I say oil-based or water-based, I just mean I'm going back to the formulation again of it. So when you have the water-based one, that could be useful at a particular time of year, or depending on all the other products that you're using, whilst the ointment, which is oil-based, could be used at other times during the year. So it's important for us to be able to safely select even our over-the-counter medication by reading exactly what's on it. And of course, the labels, another purpose of it is that it reduces medication errors. That brings me again to the point of saying, don't use other people's medication, because when they were given that medication, they were not considering the fact that you are on other medications, which could interact with this new medication, So a lot goes into the selection into the safe selection of products, of medicines, and we should be careful with that. And that's why always ask your pharmacist, that question. Could we move on, please? Okay, so now legally, the labels on medication, legally, they must be what we call bold, clear, and indelible. And that means that it should not be written in a way that it can easily rub off. And that is because it is so important. I'm not sure whether all the pharmacies in Nigeria or in other African, countries, abide with that all the time. I'm not sure. I hope so, but I definitely know that no prescription-only medication would leave a pharmacy here in the UK or in the US without it having an indelible, label on it as per how the medication should be used, the name of the medication, who it is for, the date, and then even the name of, of the provider, the supplier of the medication. Now, labels cannot be oral. So if you say, oh, I got this medication, they didn't give me a label. I was just told how to use it. That's not good enough. It's not valid. It must be written. because it's a legal requirement. So I think it's something for us to, if we're not getting that, we should ask for it and say, can you write it down for me? Can you stick it on for me? Can we move on, please? Thank you. So now I'm just going to stay there. I'm going to stay on the how and take questions here. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yes, over to you, Bumi. Questions. I could see the
Thank you so
chat
much.
popping.
We appreciate you. I think I've just got comments here saying thank you, changing the face of the pharmacy practice. And just to say thank you to you. I know we had a question from before. Where is that? I'm not sure if she's the person to answer that. I'm just going to read that question. I'm trying to look for it here. Regarding agreeing to trust our genetics about, because generic prescribing is the globally accepted norm. Every drug undergoes bioequivalence and bioavailability studies prior to being approved. In addition, quality assurances on each product batch is a regulatory mandate. There would be no access to medicines for low-income populations and low-resource economies if general describing is discarded.
Thank you very much. Yes.
So yes, I think that's about it. Thank you very much, all the speakers. Flora?
They would always...
Is Lola trying to answer that question?
Yeah,
I think she's trying to. Yeah, it's breaking. Yes, please, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I was saying that, thank you for that comment, that generic prescribing will always be here, and it's a very, very, very vital part of prescribing. However, we must be able to answer the questions of patients when they say to us that, why is it that when I used this medication, I did not get the same response? My body did not respond as it did when I used another brand of it. So we must, because we as pharmacists, we've done the pharmaceutics, we know that we must be able to answer those questions. But the key to it, like I said earlier, is that we must be able to also assure the patients that this medication has exactly the same active ingredient as the other one that you were using. So in terms of efficacy, both medication, whether it be brand or generic, have both undergone rigorous testing, and we're assured that it will be efficacious and will give the desired result. However, your response to both of them might be different, and the times at which the response you get, starts might be different. And those are just facts. It's not to say that generics are not good. It's just a fact. That it's just different, and even one generic will be different from another too, even though they're both generics. But the key to it is that they both have the same active ingredients, and eventually they will have the same reaction, in the body, or same response rather.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if any other person wants to say something on that.
Okay, in the absence of none, because of time, we still have a few more questions. It says, just a curious question. What triggers the drug to start working at a particular site?
It depends, really. It depends. If we look at it in a generic way, say, for example, it's an antihistamine. I'll give that example. So during hay fever season, and lots of people are getting sneezes, and all that. It's because they're histamines, that are released, in the body. There's a trigger in the environment, and then pollens or whatever it is that the person might be allergic to, they trigger the histamines in the body. So when you take an antihistamine, what happens is that this, like the first speaker Dr. Orode had mentioned that in, when they're doing all the lab works to find a medication to treat a condition, they would have said, okay, this is going to target this particular area. So the antihistamines have been formulated in a particular way. The active ingredient in the antihistamine is one that would target those histamines. And that's why we refer to them as, to go straight, it sees the able to work that way.
Thank you very much for answering that. The next question is, can the National Orientation Agency and the Federal Ministry of Health be in the forefront of patient education and information regarding avoiding self-medication, adverse drug reactions? I think we've kind of answered this in the previous session. But yeah, do you want to take that, please?
Yeah,
Kind of.
so that seemed like a sentence. Sorry, was it a question? I missed that.
Yeah,
Could you repeat?
It starts with the saying, can the National Orientation Agency and the Federal Ministry of Health be in the forefront of patient education and information? Yeah, I think it's more of a statement, but
Yes.
I'm thinking with this one, it's not something that we're not politicians or part of the government who can make this to happen.
Yeah, but it will be good. It'll be good for them to be at the forefront of patient education, but like I said earlier, that is why, organizations like Encapsulate Solutions are taking it upon, themselves to spread this information. And, we can keep spreading it as healthcare professionals. Yes,
absolutely. And I will also add to that also when we have the next one in May, it's we can also take it on to invite people that we know. So it's not just a forum for pharmaceutical people or students or people who are health who have health or who are working in the health sector. It's for everyone. I don't work in the health sector, but I've benefited from this. So let's take that on board ourselves to invite other people as well. The next one is, when you're taking aspirin on prescription, which requires a full glass of water, can you take other medications at the same time with the same glass of water?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, without knowing what the other medication is, all the other medications are, it's a bit dicey, answer the question without knowing the others. But the reason I'm saying that is there's some medication, let me try and pull the one out now, that would say like say something like Gaviscon, a lot of people would know Gaviscon, so if you are on antacids, and such, you should actually leave a space of like 2 hours between taking the antacids and some other medication. So I'm not sure, you've asked me about aspirin, but I don't know whether you are on antacids, or anything like that. So it just depends. It's a total picture that we're looking at. But generically, if I just want to answer in a generic way, I could say yes, a full glass of water, you can take your medications with a good full glass of water with your aspirin. However, it just depends on what's your other medication and what the, it would usually be written, on your label, and then we would have your individual label, and ideally it should be, say for example, even something as simple as paracetamol. There would be extra labels on paracetamol that would say, do not take more than 8 in 24 hours. So it would say take 2 up to 4 times a day, and it would say do not take more than 8. And there is a reason for that. The reason being that lots and lots of people could actually die from paracetamol without knowing it, because they think, oh, it's just paracetamol. But it is very, very toxic, to the liver in high, in high quantities. And in a particular day, the maximum that anybody should have should be 8. So say, for example, this person is taking paracetamol and is also taking cocodamol, or taking something like night nurse, or or day nurse that also has paracetamol in it, then it gets complicated because the person can easily go above, you know. So it wouldn't be a matter of, can I use the same glass of water to take this paracetamol now? It would now go to, how much of this paracetamol am I taking? Or is there paracetamol in another of the medication that I'm about to take?
That makes so much sense. And I think that's why in the UK as well, they don't sell more than a quantity of paracetamol to a particular person. They don't go over. The next one says, does all this apply also to supplements? I think whatever in terms of taking the water with other medicine. So she's asking, does it apply to supplements as well? Or can you take supplements with water altogether?
I would say again, without knowing exactly what it is, what supplement it is, you know, you'll be a difficult question, you know, to answer without knowing exactly what it is, because it just depends. You know, it really, really just depends on what it is and what's the, one thing I would say is, one of our speakers has already mentioned the patient information leaflet. A patient information leaflet should be in every medication. So that's a good place, you know, to start. So this should be in a pack. Some people get their medication, they never even look in it. They just bring out this one and start using it. You know, you should go and read the patient information leaflet. It will give more information about how best to use your medication. You know, so yeah. So
thank you very much for that. I'm aware of time, so thanks everyone for patiently still waiting with us. The next question is expiry date and effectiveness. What does research say?
Interesting question. I'm going to have to say that probably Dr. Kolade or Dr. Orode would answer that. But as far as I know, you know, it's a best before. We know that usually we would say stick to the expiry date on that, you know, on the package. You stick to the expiry date. It would usually say something like March 0321. You say 0321, that means the end of March 21, you know, that is 2021, end of March. However, technically, I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that, you know, on air or not, you know, but technically, most of the active ingredients will still have life in them. So you know, but, we stick to end of whatever month is on the label is what we go by.
Thank you very much.
All right, Doctor. Is Dr. Orode there? Dr. Kolade, do you want to add to that, or any of the other pharmacists in the house? Just raise your hand. I will unmute you. I want to answer that.
Sorry, I didn't really get the question.
So the question says that expiry date and effectiveness. What does research say?
So if a manufacturer have stated that a product is expiring, so that means it's expiring at that date. However, you know, there are some very scarce products, okay? So there may be very scarce products. So when it has expired, at times the pharmacist or the medic, you know, phones the manufacturer, you know, to sort of say, okay, this has expired. Can you do some analysis to be able to determine whether we can still get some levels of efficacy and is still safe to use beyond that date? And they can sort of do that data for the, but of course you can see that the process is long. So if it's something like paracetamol or a medication that is not rare, that's not feasible. But if it's a rare, so you need to weigh the benefit risk ratio. If it's a very rare disease, you know, and you know they are looking at the life of the patient versus you know, getting something at that moment, that the manufacturer can go extra length to help them to sort of analyze that batch. So, but don't use expired drugs. It's not advisable. Once it's expired, it's expired. Please.
Thank you very much. The next is, I think after this, we need to stop the questions. It says, can you take grapefruit with blood pressure medication?
There's a particular, that was one of the examples I was going to give, actually. Thank you for bringing that up. And it's very clear that research has shown that grapefruit juice definitely reacts with medication, especially simvastatin. So, and all of this, like I say, because what we're trying to do here, we're trying to say the title of what we're doing here is Own Your Health. So own your health, be responsible, get the right information from the right place. So this question is kind of general. It's too broad, to answer. So I can't say don't take grapefruit with all blood pressure, no. But it is with particular ones. So that's why we need more information. Which blood pressure medication are you on? And then I, as a pharmacist, I would check, and then I would tell you. And we have what we call summary of product characteristics. So we have, all the resources that we can give you the information that you need. And I would say Google is not a good idea, really, for, if you don't know what you're looking for. Please don't Google things, because when you Google such a thing, it could actually mess you up and give you so much information you will never want to use any medication at all. So it's best you go to the right resource to ask. So ask your pharmacist, and then they will be able to retrieve whatever information that you need specific to your case. And when a pharmacist says to you that, oh, don't use it with this particular medication, don't drink this with this particular, don't go and tell your friend that, oh, my pharmacist said when I'm taking my antidepressants that I shouldn't drink tea. I'm just giving an example. I shouldn't drink tea. That's too generic. Don't spread that kind of, information. Spread information that are specific information to the particular medication, because they're all very different. Like I've gone through all of this. All medications are different. The excipients in them are different. The bulking agents are different. So any information that we want to give to you will be specific to the medication you're on and not just general.
Thank you very much for that. I think one of the things we take home is that, everything is tailor made. I think that's the right word. Yeah. Tailor made medication, tailor made to you as well. Your history in everything matters. So you can't use your one to, my clothes size can't fit somebody else, basically. So it's tailored made to me. Yeah. Someone says, thank you so much. Does all this apply to supplements too? Great question. I would love to know this answer. I'm not sure what that is pertaining to. Is it true that all drugs have side effects, including vitamin C tablets?
Yes, most, I would say, I tell people, I say, most medication, have side effects, most. What medicine does is that we weigh the benefits against the risks. And when we're able to ascertain that the benefits that a person would derive for this indication, when they use it for this indication or for this disease, when the benefits outweigh the risk, we'll say, go ahead, prescribe it. And then the interesting thing, it brings me to the interesting thing that because each of us, our DNA, our makeup is different. The way we even metabolize the medication is also different. So person A and person B is going to break down the medication in a different way in their body. So because of that, we will not even be able to pinpoint which side effects person A will have, because person A might have a side effect and person B will not have it. So it's so different. So, but to answer that question, yes, most medications have side effects. It just depends, is it just a slight, and then there's some side effects that are transient, Excuse me. And when I say transient, I just mean that it's a side effect that could just occur for a few minutes or for one day, and then it passes away. Some are persistent, so it just depends. And if it's just a transient side effects, you shouldn't say, because of it, I'm not going to take this medication, because you know what to expect, that it's going to get better, But for some side effects, they're persistent, and then they become debilitating. And then in that case, you just can't carry on taking the medication.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to stop with questions there. I'm just going to read the comment, otherwise we're not going to stop. It says, I've always wished for this kind of initiative in Nigeria. Thank you to the team for putting this together. This is very informative. Thank you. Okay, maybe what we'll do is we still have almost 6 questions here, and I'm very cognizant of time. We still have one more speaker, so I'm just going to call back Flora to please introduce the last speaker, please. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was fantastic. Again, another fantastic session. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go to our 5th speaker. Her name is Farm Aishat Olufadi Ahmed. She's a teaching and research staff at the University of Ilorin, and she specializes in pharmaceutical microbiology. And she has a special interest in antimicrobial resistance. She's currently working on her PhD in pharmaceutical microbiology at the University of Ibadan. So over to you, Farmer Aishat. You should be able to share.
Okay, I'll
yeah,
try
we can hear you.
now.
That's great.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's been very, very long and educative. I've enjoyed every single session. Thank you so much to everyone that has enlightened us, everyone that has come before me. Now, on this segment, I'm basically a storyteller. All the details that you require from discovery, drug discovery to your final product. The previous speakers have touched on all of that. So I am just going to mention a few drugs, prominent drugs, and how they were discovered. Where did they come from? Many times we see these drugs on the shelves. We sometimes we ask ourselves, how did these people even think of this? Answer some of these questions. So here, incredible stories of drug discovery.
Aishat,
I'm going to make it excited to learn, because I am. So we have a few medicine of interest, and we'll look at them one at a time.
Can you hear me?
Fun fact.
Aishat, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yes, just sorry. You might have to put off your video during the presentation just to help with the network, and then you can come on afterwards.
Okay.
All right, great.
Let's do that. So can you hear me now? All right. So a few fun facts. These drugs, ivermectin, penicillin, and aspirin, what do you think they have in common? Somebody who may not understand might say, okay, they all rhyme. It's not just that. They rhyme quite all right, but they belong to an allied group of drugs that lay claim to the greatest beneficial impact in the health and well-being of humanity. Those three are termed wonder drugs. They came, or they were discovered at a time when there was a huge gap in medicine, in medication for humans, and so wonder drugs. And they were all discovered from natural sources. And when I say natural sources, microorganisms in the soil. Some drugs are discovered from molds, fungi. Some of them are discovered in really odd places. So all three were discovered from natural sources, and the discoveries earned the scientists or the researchers involved a Nobel Prize. Imagine that. Now we'll start with penicillins. it's the mold juice that was penicillin. You know, at the time when it was accidentally discovered, it was called the mold juice. Now, how was it discovered? You know, penicillin was discovered and isolated from a mold. When you say mold, please, I want you to look at the orange that I have on this screen. It has this whitish, grayish thing growing on it. Yes, that is a mold. And I'm very sure a lot of us are familiar with this thing that grows on our oranges sometimes. You know, when you perceive the smell, it just seems very rancid and spoiled. That's not it. It's actually isolated from a mold that grew by accident in a laboratory of a man named Sir Alexander Fleming in 1928. That was a long time ago. Just imagine, there was a huge gap. Why were antibiotics needed at the time? Hospitals were riddled with patients presenting with all kinds of infections, all kinds of ailments, all kinds of problems that really didn't have cures. So at that time, antibiotics were really needed. Now, what was the serendipity about this? Sir Fleming actually returned from holiday. I'm sure all of the research might have taken a toll on him, and he just decided to go take a rest. He came back, and then he was sorting through the petri dishes in which he grew some of the organisms responsible for the infection that the patients had. And then he noticed that one of them had this mold on it. And then what was distinct about the mold was just surrounding this mold was a very clear zone. You know, ordinarily in laboratories, we have our petri dishes. When we inoculate them with microorganisms, it is full of their microorganism, but there was a clear path, kind of like this mold was secreting something that was killing the bacteria in its immediate vicinity. Then he discovered that this mold, at the time he termed this secretion the mold juice. The mold was a rare species of Penicillium notatum. It was eventually dubbed Penicillium notatum. His assistants were charged with the responsibility of extracting this mold juice that changed the course of medicine and earned them a Nobel Prize. Now, before the penicillin that you see on the shelves, it actually went through many years of rigorous research. You know, the speakers before me all talked about the processes, all the preclinical trials, clinical trials, everything that has to go into a medicine before it turns up on the shelf. You know, all of these processes had to go through all of these processes before it eventually became the final drug that we know today. Now, penicillin gave birth to so many other antibiotics that have, it was really revolutionary. The discovery was a major thing, because now we have combinations such as ampicillin, cloxacillin, that's the ampiclox that you know, that stemmed from chemical rearrangement of the structure of penicillin. You know, we have even a different class of antibiotics called the cephalosporins. All of these stemmed from the penicillin that was discovered accidentally from a mold growing in a petri dish. Moving on, aspirin. We all know aspirin. In Nigeria, I do not know in other countries, but in Nigeria, we know a popular brand called Alabukun. It's the miracle from a tree. It's actually isolated from the bark of a tree called the willow tree. Now, it's been used for many, many, many years, because it was documented that ancient Egyptians in the year 3000 to 1500 BC used the bark to treat aches and pains. At the time, they had no idea why they were doing that. They knew that, okay, if they made a decoction of it or they made a tea of it, it would actually ease their aches and ease their pains. At the time, the whole drug discovery process was still relatively new. Nobody knew exactly what to do with it. Nobody knew that they had to isolate something very important from it before it became a drug. Now, Hippocrates also administered willow tea to ease the pain of childbirth as far back as 400 years before Christ. Now, how was it isolated? In the year 1829, salicin was extracted as salicylic acid. Salicin is the active component or the agent of service, the thing that actually allows for the ease of pain and ease of aches in this willow bark that they harvest. Now, it was extracted by Mr. Henry Leroux. Now, years later, synthetic salicylic acid was also discovered. Unfortunately, it had too many side effects. Remember when some of the previous speakers were talking about clinical trials, preclinical trials, so many of these things hadn't been done. So when they were able to get synthetic salicylic acid, it caused a lot of nausea, vomiting, stomach upset, and even coma. So it had to be dumped for a while. Now, the birth of the modern aspirin, many years later, it was now rediscovered by a man named Felix Hoffman as acetyl salicylic acid. This is like a chemical rearrangement. You know, there's an acetyl in front of the salicylic acid, meaning that after so many years of research, they realized that if they add an acetyl group to the salicylic acid, it was actually less detrimental to the health of those that use it. Now, then it was now used as an analgesic. They understood at that point that it could be used as an analgesic. Now, at the time, I didn't put that in the slide, I'm sorry, but I'll have to. I'm a storyteller in this segment, so please bear with me. Some years later, a young man who was actually hemophiliac was using this drug, and he realized, unfortunately, that although he was hemophiliac and his blood wasn't clotting, when he uses this drug, it makes it worse. And so that one also brought up or spiked the interest in the drug again, that perhaps it has this ability to become a blood loosening agent, which is why now we prescribe aspirin at low doses in heart maintenance, you know, in cardiac disease maintenance, to prevent strokes and many other of these things. So all of these drugs that most of these drugs that you see have really interesting stories, where they stem from and where they're going to. And I'm pretty sure as years go by, with more chemical rearrangements, they're probably going to find more and more uses for these drugs. Now, this other one is ivermectin. Ivermectin is actually used in humans for the cure of river blindness or onchocerciasis. I hope I didn't murder that word, but that is what it is used for. But it didn't start that way. It didn't start that way at all. As at the time that it was discovered, that's in the late 1960s, it was discovered by a Japanese microbiologist named Satoshi Omura while collecting soil samples. Now, I have done a few researches where I collected soil samples in search of a possibly good antimicrobial agent or antibacterial agents. This is what this man was doing. He was looking for new antibacterial agents. And while at it, his collaborator, a man named William Campbell, tested the soil samples against parasitic worms affecting livestock, and then found out that it actually had remarkable activity against the parasites, internal and external parasites in the livestock and other animals. And that was it. They shifted their focus from antibacterial agents to something antiparasitic, and then it was a hit. They were able to synthesize the compound, and it became, it was called ivermectin at the time. The new compound ivermectin became one of the top-selling veterinary medicines in the world. It eventually became used for humans. You know, in 1987, the compound was found to have remarkable activity against the worm responsible for onchocerciasis, that's river blindness. And then they still went ahead and, you know, got a Nobel Prize recently, actually, in 2015 for their discovery. Now, ivermectin doesn't stop there, because I think it is actually in the early stages preclinical trials against COVID-19. I read that it can actually lower the RNA load by about 5,000 folds. I'm not sure about that, but then it's in the preclinical stage, and it has a lot of prospects. So they're not done with this drug. You know, it was discovered in late 1960s. This is many, many years later, and they're still finding new uses for the drug, and it's going to continue like that because research does not stop. A natural source is, the bacteria actually responsible for secreting the ivermectin is Streptomyces ivermectilus. Moving on. Now, we are all conversant with Lonart, we're conversant with artemether, Ata-ether. We are aware, because we're in Africa, we are very, very, very familiar with malaria. Now, the discovery was actually, it was more political. Let me put it that way. It was more political because it's at the time during in the mid 1960s, malaria was such a huge problem in China, in Vietnam, and then it was doing huge damage to the army. You know, they were not able to fight because most of them are really weak. So scientists all across China were ordered by the then chairman of the China Republic, of the Vietnam Republic or something, to find an effective remedy, as malaria was seriously affecting the fighting ability of their troops. Now, this led them to form a multi-center collaboration, and they termed it Project 523. It was formed in May of 1967. The anti-malaria property of the leaves of Artemisia annua was then discovered. This is after several several attempts, several plants, several Chinese plants were actually subjected to testing, and then they found out that this particular one was very, very potent against the parasite or the organism that was responsible for bacteria. So with several chemical modifications, they went from the artemisinin that was formulated then to dihydroartemisinin. It was synthesized and it gave a more potent and more stable drug, which gives us the artemether and the artesunate, the arteether that we know today. So natural source is from Artemisia annua. You can see the plants right there. From there, we got our artemether, we got our arteether, we got our artesunate. Quinine. I heard in some places quinine is no longer used. However, it is still prescribed here in Nigeria, especially in pregnant women. Now, it comes to the legend. You know, the legend has it was discovered in in Native America or in South America, and the legend has it that Native Indian drank from a stagnant pool at the base of the tree was then termed the queen. Suspicious at the time, and unfortunately, they had no idea how it happened. It was called witchcraft. You know, in the mid-1700s, chemists were convinced that was an active principle in the cinchona bark, that's the quinquina tree, responsible for this curative property against malaria or fever at the time, but it was attributed to magic and witchcraft. So, of course, in the dawn of understanding, gradually we realized that it is not witchcraft, it is not magic. Two French scientists now isolated the active ingredient scientists who developed the synthetic quinine, which had far fewer side effects than the natural variety. This is what we're saying, you know, the whole process of drug discovery, from the discovery all the way to the final product, there's so many things that has to go into the production. You know, you don't just pluck something and begin to chew it and you won't expect side effects. Talking of side effects, I'm going to deviate a little bit. We actually have a lot of local herbs in Africa. You know, we're very native for one time, and then they brought in this really little baby. Unfortunately, she lost her life, and explanation was she was running a fever, and instead of them taking her to the hospital or giving the normal paracetamol that we all know, they went ahead and gave her agbo. You know, agbo is locally made concoctions, locally made decoctions, locally made herbs that we have in our country here. So they went ahead and gave the girl, she came to the hospital. At the time, the side effect was really critical. She was vomiting blood, and the really little pretty girl died. And this is why we're telling people, we're trying to explain to people that you don't just pluck things together and put together and then tell yourself you have a drug. There's a whole lot of process that the herbs have to go through before you're sure of the safety margin, you're sure of the dosage. You know, the only difference between a drug and a poison is dosage. You know, you just go on and swallow drugs without actually using at the correct dose. You are either treating yourself or poisoning yourself. So we need to really the one South African, it's called Mbiza. I don't know if there's some of us familiar with it here. Now, the African traditional medicine is a holistic healthcare system. It doesn't just delve into herbs. There's a whole
You're breaking. We can't hear you, Aisha. Aisha there? All right, while we're waiting for Aisha to come back.
Yeah, we just take some questions while we're waiting. And any of the panel can just, please do feel free to answer. I think the first one is, can someone please explain what metabolism means? Anyone of the panel?
Repeat the question. I'm not sure if people heard that.
Please explain. I'm not sure whether it's metabolism or metabolis. It says, please explain metabolis.
Oh, okay. When the body metabolizes. I think Lola was the one talking about that. Yeah. Dr. Dabiri.
So are we talking
You
about
mentioned that.
metabolism then?
Yeah, somebody was asking, so what does when the body metabolizes a drug, what does that mean?
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you now.
That's when when you take the drug, the medicine, then your body starts to break it down in the way that it is eliminated, finally from your body. So that's the process, of metabolism.
And then the next question, is there genetically personalized medicine in Nigeria? And if yes, where are we? Genetically personalized medicine in Nigeria.
I don't know about that, but I know that, there are many people that are already doing research in that area. I know I have a prof, who is working so much in the area of that pharmacogenomics and things. So, yeah.
That might be a question for
Can you hear me now?
Our researchers. Yes, Aishat, we can. Aishat, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. I think you need to go back to where you were talking about the person that died. So I think you need to start from there.
Yeah, yes. the young girl that was given Agbo. The local herbs.
Okay, yes. Ooh, all of that story. Okay, yeah, so I was just citing an example with a young baby that was, she was running a fever. At the time I was at the hospital, my youngest was running a temperature. And so I was really frightened. I ran to the hospital. And then while we were there, somebody else brought in the baby, emergency. And then she was vomiting a lot of blood. On Askans, they said they gave her the locally prepared herbs when she was running a fever. And then it got out of hand. She had a very nasty side effect to the drug, and it was uncontrollable. She didn't even, I don't think she lasted 12 hours in the hospital, and she gave up the ghost. So I was talking about how there's a whole longer process to the production of drugs, starting from the discovery before it goes to the clinical trials, all the way to the clinical trials, when you do toxicity testing, safety margin, all of that. You have to go through all of that process before you begin to give out drugs, because it's only a dose that differentiates a drug from a poison. You can just keep swallowing drugs, and then you wouldn't even tell that you're poisoning yourself. While using drugs, you can either be treating yourself or poisoning yourself. So you need to be sure of what you're using. However, local herb mixtures in Africa is a part of us. It's a part of our culture. It's a part of our heritage. It's something that I'm pretty sure we cannot do away with. So which is why I think researchers need to liaise with our local herb practitioners. We did this workshop for local herb practitioners one time like that in Kwara State here, Lauren, where we formed some kind of collaboration with them, helping them understand that, okay, you people know these things, you know the herbs that work for this, the combination that work for this. Now let us help you find out the toxicity margin. Let us help you find out exactly how to process it and make it into a formulation that is suitable for administration. So this I think we should do. We cannot toss our heritage away. We cannot toss our culture away, but we can actually incorporate both worlds and make something good out of it. So our agbo, our mbiza, all of that is just herbalism. It's one of the levels of our holistic healthcare system in Africa. The traditional healer, they provide healthcare service based on culture, religious background, because what you find in Ilorin, Kwara State is different from what you find in Akwa Ibom. Number one, the herbs you find here is different from the herbs you find there. Our religious background, our religious knowledge is completely different. Our attitude and beliefs are completely different, but we can't throw them away. They're a part of us. Because illnesses are often believed not to only have natural causes, but also supernatural causes. The cure often lies in the mixture of herbs, sacrifices, and incantations. You see, I don't know, we watch African movies when somebody is sick, before you know it, somebody is doing Yamio Soronga, Sala Solo, Solo Sala. It's pretty worrisome for me, but then it's a part of the culture and we can't exactly toss it away. I don't know how efficient it is, but it does happen. Herbs may also contain minerals and animal parts. Now, the major obstacle to the use of African medicine are their poor quality control and safety, which is why I think there's a lot of collaboration needed between researchers in Africa and the traditional healers. Traditional medical practice are still shrouded with a lot of secrecy. So many of them do not even want to tell you what is in their concoctions. You know, they'll say it came from their great grandfather, and it's been kept a secret in the family. So they don't even want to tell you exactly what it is. With few reports or documentation of adverse effects, you know, I imagine that the poor baby that died from using the agbo might have suffered from some kind of adverse reaction that even we don't understand. Now, African traditional medicine, it has a lot of potential because it provides some kind of jobs for those in the lower class and healthcare coverage in places where they can't afford hospitals and all of that. But I still think we need a lot of collaboration so as to expand our knowledge and expand our medicine base, especially in this Africa. So thank you so much for listening. I'm sorry for all the disruptions. My network has been really terrible.
Oh, thank you for powering through. That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bumi.
Thank you so much. Very informative. I'll call on Mrs. Lawal just to shed light on the Agbo part, which is the local herbs. Thank you.
I'm just unmuting her now. All right, there we go.
Okay. I was struggling with unmuting. You can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, a lot has been said on Agbo. Interestingly, I know that a lot of work is getting done too. I know that the Faculty of Pharmacy in University of Lagos, they're doing a lot of work in their pharmacognosy. They've come up with some products that are NAFDAC approved and NAFDAC registered for use. And I'm a beneficiary of one of their products. I recall that post-surgery, my blood level was very low. And they gave me some herbs. Within a few weeks, it had come back to almost normal. My doctor was surprised. Now, they are using their pharmacognosy knowledge, and that is very important. We cannot just take this Agbo anyhow. It is when we do that we get into trouble. A lot of herbs, a lot of our drugs have their origin in herbs. So herbs are not bad, but herbs have to be in the hands of those who know what to do with them, because the doses, the toxic constituents, how much toxicity it has, all of those. There's a lot from today's session. We see that a lot goes into approving a drug for use, and those are the things that I'm missing in Agbo. I have so many cases of people who have used Agbo and gotten into trouble because they did not get them from the right sources. They did not consult the right people. They just heard that somebody is making this somewhere and they go in there and take the concoction. Now, we have talked about collaboration. I know that it's getting better. Initially, it was a bit difficult collaborating with the herbal people because many of them saw it as their birthright and were not very willing. But it's getting better now, and we have a lot of moves in that direction, which is good for us. So there are many herbal remedies now that are being supervised or that are being made suitable for use, going through the proper processing. So what we should do, if we must use Agbo, let's make sure that we contact pharmacists, because pharmacists are the custodians of that aspect of medical care.
Thank you so very much for that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I think that even answers one of the questions already. What are the pharmacists doing on the dosage and the quality assurance of the herbs or medicinal plant concoction in our society? So that's the answer right there. And someone says, why is fruit no longer allowed during today's malaria therapy? Anyone? Why is fruit no longer allowed during today's malaria therapy?
Mrs. Lawal, do you want to take that, or Aisha? Fruits and malaria therapy.
Okay, a student of mine was going to work on oranges. You know, he was saying that he noticed that whenever he feels sick and he takes oranges, he feels better. I had to stop him and tell him that oranges are actually very high in vitamin C, and it's been proven to affect the action of the anti-malarial, and that is when it's used together. So that means if you want to take oranges while treating yourself for malaria, you might want to give it some space. That's just what I know. I do not think you cannot use fruits at all when you're treating. I think it's even better for you, you know, with their glutathiones and vitamin C's and vitamin E's. It's healthy for you, but you just have to give it some space. That's what I think, right?
Thank you very much. Then the next says, how come these drugs still have side effects despite their natural sources? Don't you think research still needs to be focused on reduction or eradication of side effects? I think, at least from the little that I've learned today, I would probably say that it's not a generic question to everyone. Side effects vary per person depending on, you know, their body. And
even the finally formulated drugs, you still have side effects.
Absolutely.
Then it's still ongoing. Like I said, remember when I mentioned salicylic acid, you know, when it was creating so many side effects, but they eventually found acetyl salicylic acid that had less side effects. So who knows, in a few years, there might even be something else that will be added to the frame of salicylic acid and make it even better than the acetyl salicylic acid. So research is ongoing. You know, I think it's going to be like that till the world is terminated. We'll never stop finding ways to make it better.
Absolutely.
So we'll keep working.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Dabri.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to drop it here that for medicine, what's happening in the medical world now, and I think in a few years, what will be happening, you know, across board, all nations, will be what we refer to as pharmacogenomics, and that is personalized medicines. Now, what that refers to is that each person has their own, you know, unique DNA. And because of that, their response to whether it's medication or these fruits or these herbs or whatever you're talking about, you know, they would react in a particular way based on the pathway in the body that that the drug or substance, let me say substance, travels through to get metabolized. So say, for example, we've got what we refer to as cytochrome P450, you know, so if drug A is broken down through that pathway of cytochrome P450, for a person, if they do this particular test, you know, it's just a test of their DNA, it's like a swab. What happens is that we're able to determine that this person is a fast metabolizer. And if a person is a fast metabolizer, that could mean that the normal dosage that is given to people usually for a particular medication might not work for that person, because once it gets into their body, it gets metabolized, it gets broken down, and it's out of their body even before it can be effective. Whilst for someone else who is a slow metabolizer, that particular substance might just stay in their body longer than usual and have a full day having side effects. So I think all of the questions that we're asking with regards to side effects and why it works for some people and some doesn't work for some people, pharmacogenomics will be something that will be able to answer that in a few, you know, in a few years' time. But it's already started, but it's just not being rolled out because it's quite expensive to do those kind of testings. But if you are able to afford that kind of testing, then you can know from the beginning that, you know what, I am going to get side effects from this particular medication, this antihypertensive, I'm going to get side effects. So perhaps your doctor would advise or your pharmacist would advise, don't go that way, because the risk is more than the benefits for you. Instead, try something else. And the analysis from the pharmacogenomic results will tell you which of the antihypertensives will be best for you to use and at what dose. So I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. So, but you can start asking your doctors, with regards to that about pharmacogenomics. And I'm sure they will be able to point you the right way. If you need further information with regards to that, you can contact me. I'm here in Aberdeen, Scotland, and I can give you further information.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to read the comments, and then we have 2 more questions, and that's it. So the 2 more questions, any part of the panel can answer. So the comments are collaboration, sensitization, innovation, information formulation for our medication is the way to own our health. Someone says, Aisha, God Almighty bless you. Do not share your medicines. One man's meat is another man's poison. And then the last 2 questions, someone says, I used to have malaria often, but I've noticed that since I started eating an apple every day, I don't have malaria all year round. What does it contain that is helpful? So that's the first question. And then the second question is, I think this is more like my male friends and their wives are complaining about some BP drugs causing erectile dysfunction. Why are men not being educated by most of healthcare providers to avoid family problems? It's more about men education around owning their health.
Can I address that question about the erectile dysfunction and hypertensive medication? So yes, some medication will contribute to, not necessarily cause, but contribute to erectile dysfunction. However, a very valid point, which in my practice, and I specialize in hypertension management, in my practice is that patients fail to appreciate that elevated hypertension for a prolonged period of time in itself will cause erectile dysfunction. So yes, some medication will add to it. However, it's already going down that way. And another thing that causes erectile dysfunction is high blood sugar, untreated diabetes. There are 2 conditions, diabetes and hypertension, that are silent killers, especially of us, of Black and ethnic minority groups. It's very difficult for you to know that you have high blood pressure without you monitoring regularly. So I think the point to take away is that yes, some medication will add to causing erectile dysfunction. However, the bigger picture is to treat the elevated hypertension, which in itself is a risk. And so yes, you can change some medication. There are some antihypertensives that have no documented side effects, of which erectile dysfunction is one. And there are some. So there are other options. However, I must always point out, every time this question comes up, I'm quite passionate about it because people fail to see the first part, which is that the high blood pressure itself that has been high for a very prolonged period of time itself is already killing the blood supply to the arteries and veins down below. So the same way it does to your heart muscle, the male organ is a muscle, the heart is a muscle. And so where all the veins and capillaries are getting blocked or getting affected or getting overdilated because of high blood pressure, it's the same function. So that in itself will cause erectile dysfunction. I hope that answers the question. So there are alternatives. There are some not all antihypertensives will cause erectile dysfunction or add to it. But the bigger picture is that having high blood pressure, so this is where the risk-benefit analysis comes in. You have a risk of dying of a stroke or a heart attack if you have untreated hypertension. Less likely than dying from having erectile dysfunction. Not that I'm saying having erectile dysfunction is not a serious condition to be addressed. However, treat your hypertension and that in itself will reduce the chance of you going down the irreversible pathway of erectile dysfunction. Does that make sense? I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much for sharing that. Before we go on to the last question, please, the feedback link has been posted in the chat. If we can kindly just fill that in, it should take you just a few seconds to fill in. I think the last one was around apple, eating an apple. I'm not sure if that's been answered.
No, that's not been answered. You can read that again.
Okay, let me just quickly check it. While we're doing that, please kindly fill the feedback form. There's a link in the chat. And it says, I used to have malaria often, but I've noticed that since I started eating an apple every day, I don't have malaria all year round. What does it contain that is helpful? So I think she's asking, does it contain something that is anti-malaria?
Malaria, but can I ask, are all these multiple episodes of malaria, are they all tested, or do I just feel under the weather? It's the same way we UK say, oh, I think I have the flu. But are these all confirmed diagnosed cases of malaria? And when I mean diagnosed, did you go for a lab test and you were actually active malaria parasites in? Because I'm not sure. I'm not experienced in the contents of an apple per se. Having anything specific that would be treating the malaria or preventing malaria? So
does anyone else in the panel want to comment?
Malaria is obviously caused by a parasite. So I don't know. Did you eliminate some other things that is coinciding with the period within which you are taking that apple? So that needs to be sort of evaluated, because at times many coincidences happen. But to be honest, I haven't done any research in the area of apple, whether it has any active that would be killing malaria parasites in your blood, which I doubt.
Thank you very much for that. It just reminds me of the song, "An apple a day keeps the doctor away." The last question, and this one is the last one. If everyone on the panel, if we can all answer. Like I said, there is a link. Please, we appreciate your feedback. It will help us to, do better and also to serve you better. So the last one is, I'm type 2 PLWDS, like I mentioned earlier, but I will be 52 years by March the 2nd. I survived COVID-19 infection attack less than 2 months ago. My question is, can I take COVID-19 vaccine? By the way, my body isn't smooth as before. I can't stool easily. And I just had a malaria attack yesterday after 8 years. I believe drug education is better. Do by pharmacists, my opinion. So I think this person is just asking if he can take the COVID-19 vaccine and explaining his issue. The
person said I do something. I didn't know what the bit.
He said, I can't stool easily, and I just had a malaria attack yesterday after 8 years.
Can I address about the COVID-19 vaccine?
Go on.
We cannot cover that now. I would say the information is out there, the correct information. You said a lot today that would help you in assessing when you're reading information about the vaccine. So I would suggest you do that. We cannot, we don't know your medical history fully. We can't just say yes or no. I say go and read the information that is available, World Health Organization website and so on. Discuss with your personal doctor, and then you can make the decision together. We cannot just give a generic answer here and say yes or no. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything about that.
Manufacturer of the different vaccines, AstraZeneca, the Pfizer, all have medical information departments that can be contactable all over the world. So don't go to WhatsApp, don't go to Dr. WhatsApp or Dr. Google. Go directly to the creator of the medication, and they will answer you and explain to you. It may take a while for them to respond because the whole world is trying to get in touch with them, but that's what medical information departments are for. It's to give you correct information based on data and based on fact, not based on so sorry, if you don't understand Yoruba, come and hear what somebody else has said, or somebody has forwarded you something on WhatsApp or whatever. Go directly to the source of it. It's very easy. Everybody has access nowadays. You can go contact the companies directly. You read the information leaflet that they have put out, product characteristics that they have put out of who can have the vaccine and who they suspect cannot have the vaccine, because even they themselves have only a small proportion of people that they have tested it on. Maybe 40,000 people versus the entire world, billions of people. So take every piece of information you read with a pinch of salt that isn't from the source or from the manufacturer, because they're the ones with the data. And the data is all out there for you to read, but make sure, as Flora has said, is go to reliable sources of information, not a lot of forwarded. But like, speak to your doctor who knows your condition.
In your full medical history, yeah.
And your medical history. That's the most important. If you take anything away from here, is that no two people are the same. Even twins may not react to a medication the same way.
Yeah. Thank you. Any more questions, Bumi? Thank you.
No, that's it. Thank you, Flora. Over to you. And thanks everyone for persevering tonight. Thank you.
Amazing. That was amazing. Does anyone else have any comments? I will allow you to unmute yourself now and make a comment or question now that we are almost through with the program. Everyone, if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself, or you want to give a comment or raise your hand. No? All righty. So thank you so much. Oh, I got somebody who said hello.
As me, Lion Chima.
All right, go ahead.
I want to thank this initiative. I am so grateful. I'm from Nigeria. And these questions and this explanation given to a lot of what has taken our loved ones and friends, you have made our life in the future easier. I thank the initiative, and I want to beg that you guys take it further by educating more of your professional colleagues in Nigeria, not just more, because they are responsible for not reading, not even bothering to educate us, and we have this complication. I commend pharmacist Lawan and Aisha and all of you. You guys rock. Thank you very much. God bless you, and I love you guys. Andy, thank you, Dr. Andy. Thank you a million times. God bless you. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much for that comment. We appreciate it.
Well done, Flora and the team. Really wonderful. I'm not a pharmacist, but well done. It's very impressive.
Thank you very much. We're glad that it has been impactful. That was our aim.
I did learn some little bits here and there, so I'm, well done team.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Any more comments or questions?
Yeah, well done.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. I am really grateful for this event, and I feel like going for pharmacy. You're doing wonderfully well, honestly, and I think this should be.
Let's see your face. Let's see your face.
Community. I'm in the kitchen. It should be taken to local community. I just coming from school. I joined late, and I thought I'd missed a lot. And when I came, I didn't regret I even joined late. Honestly, this should be taken to local community. Everybody should be aware. Everybody should be educated, and you are doing wonderfully well. Honestly, even if you have not started it, I'm going to take this message to my local community. Honestly, I plan to sensitize them on the little I've learned today and to really
fantastic.
Go along. Thank you so much.
That's what we want. That's what we want. In terms of taking it to communities, well, let's see what happens when Corona disappears. And of course, we will need sponsorship to do that. We're happy to take it anywhere people need to go. I might not go some places though. Let's see how it is. Depends where it is. But yes, that is the aim. What you've learned here, shared with people. We want the truth to trump any misinformation that is out there. So any more comments? Any more questions? Speakers, please, can you post your contact details in the chat? People might want to contact you for different things.
We are available on LinkedIn. You can on LinkedIn.
Yeah, people can. Yeah, if you can put your LinkedIn handle in the chat, that would be good, so people can connect. We're all for connecting and learning from each other. Nobody's holding any information. Nobody knows it all. Sharing is caring. So, okay, if there's no more comments or questions, I will say thank you all to everyone who's joined. Thank you. That's been amazing. Panel, please don't go yet. Just a short minute after everyone leaves. I will say bye to everyone else. Thank you. You can put your video on and say bye to us as you're going.